If you'll remain standing, Pastor Pat Basio is going to do the invocation.
I'm pinch praying for Reverend Iris today. And while we pray, would you please remember to pray for the safety of our community, with the weather being a little questionable. And also Reverend Blakey's mother passed away, so we want to pray for the Blakey family also. Lord, thank you so much because you care for us, and we thank you because your love sustains us. We thank you, Lord, for an opportunity to pray. We ask for protection for our community, especially those in traffic at this time. Keep them safe and bring them home. We pray for comfort and peace for those who've lost loved ones, for the Blakey family. And Lord, be with us in this meeting. Lead and guide us, I pray. In Christ's name, amen. Thank you.
Please be seated. Mr. Mizzi, can we call the roll?
Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Present.
Councilman Templin.
Present.
Councilman Cisco.
Present.
Councilman Hayes.
Present.
Councilman DiGiulio.
Here.
And Pro Tem Keenan.
Present. And
We have a quorum, sir, with the mayor temporarily out.
all right, corrections and approval of the agenda for tonight. Any
Let me,
corrections?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask, with respect to the mayor's item number 2, announcement of review team members recommended by Mayor Matekas, I had sought a clarification because I may have misread, I may have missed it somehow, but I don't recall reading in the act any authority for the mayor to make such appointments or recommend such appointments. So therefore, until we can hear some elucidation on the bona fides of his appointments, I think we should table this matter until we can have an opportunity to properly discuss it.
Okay, so
Motion, Dennis?
I'd like to move accordingly.
And I'll support it.
all right, so we have a motion to table the mayor's item number 2, the announcement of the review team members recommended by Mayor Matekas to the state of Michigan, by Mr. Hayes, Councilman Hayes, and seconded by Councilman Cisco. So as the mayor steps in, I'll let him.
DiGiulio.
I'm sorry, DiGiulio, I'm sorry. I'll let you, we have a motion to table your item number 2 by Councilman Hayes, seconded by Councilman DiGiulio. And if you want to open it up for discussion at this point.
I thought
Through
we
the
couldn't
chair,
discuss.
but
You can't
it's-
discuss.
Oh, that's right.
It's not an action item, though. Can that?
So you're saying it's,
Well, I think you can remove it, but since it's not an action item, I don't know if you could table it.
got it.
But that's, I don't know.
So is your,
Well, if you'd like me to clarify, I guess and the mayor may have not seen it, but I did send him an email asking him for his basis for making the appointments. And I asked council also, and I hadn't heard from either. I didn't see anything in the act that permitted a recommendation by a single member of this body, and particularly in light of the fact that we are a weak mayor system. I found it, I saw where the governor appoints somebody, the treasurer designee, the governor appoints the Department of Technology director or designee, but I didn't see anything else about who appoints. No, I don't know where, I just was trying to find out where that was coming from, frankly.
I'll put the gavel back in the Mayor Pro Tem because I'd like to speak to the matter. I didn't answer Councilman Hayes' item because I thought there was a question that he didn't ask me either how I came to do it, why I came to do it. He simply stated that I didn't have the right to do it, and I didn't think under the Open Meetings Act anybody who sends the first email can say whatever they want. But if you answer in such a way that you open the matter for debate, as I understand the Open Meetings Act, you've now violated it. So I sent also and asked council for an opinion. We didn't have it before the meeting. That was the reason you were not answered back. But I will answer how this thing came about, because the emergency manager said that the state had asked me to give them 2 names. So I don't think it falls under 436. I think it falls under the power of the governor, who appoints the people to sit on the review team. I asked some people. These 2 gentlemen finally agreed to serve. I think they're both eminently qualified, longtime Allen Park residents, and so I submitted their names and to the EM, who forwarded them to the governor's office. I don't know who in the governor's office reviews it, but they did last week ask the 2 gentlemen to complete an application form, and did it say that they had the resumes, and that's where it was. So that was the only reason that it was done. Was not done under the charter. Obviously, a review team is not a commission or board or anything that would fall under that, and that's very clear. So I was asked to do it by the emergency manager on the request of the governor, and that's what I did.
And just a point of clarification, I would probably respectfully take some exception to your interpretation of the Open Meetings Act, because I think the Open Meetings Act speaks to things leading to a decision, and I think asking for a clarification has nothing to do with the decision. I'd ask counsel if he'd want to chime in on that, but my understanding of the Open Meetings Act is that if you're debating an issue that would lead to a decision, which this clearly was not, because the decision clearly had been made by your own admission, I don't know how that really has any impact on the Open Meetings Act, but maybe counsel could ask or give us his opinion on that.
If I could here, since I am chairing the meeting right now at this point, I'd just like to ask the attorney. It does seem to make sense to me, and if you want to weigh in here, Joe, it is not a item to be voted on. It's just an announcement. It sounds like the announcement is just as a point of order, in the sense that it's already been sent to the governor. The wheels are already somewhat in motion. I mean, it doesn't seem to me as an item that can just be removed. I mean, quite frankly, the announcement's been made here already today. I think we should just move past it at this point. Do you want to weigh in on that, or?
As parliamentarian, you can do that. And just, I mean, excuse me. Yeah, this was not an action. It's my understanding this was not an action item, right? So this body wasn't even going to vote on it anyway.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm going to go back to corrections and approval of the minutes, or of the agenda, with that being an item that I'm assuming cannot be removed, as it's just a point of order, just to let us know.
And that's
that it's
fine,
been
Mr.
done.
Chairman, but I think it's important, because from time to time, we keep dragging up this old chestnut about the Open Meetings Act, and everybody seems to have their interpretations. I would like clarity once and for all. I was not asking to debate the matter. I was merely seeking clarification. I think that falls without the Open Meetings Act. I'd like counsel to
If I could just say,
opine on that.
right now, the point in the agenda that we're at is corrections and approval of the agenda. We're not in an Open Meetings Act discussion. We're not anywhere near that. So again, anybody else have any issue with the agenda for tonight? Hearing none.
Wait a minute, I want to ask you a question. Mayor says he has resumes from these people?
No, he said the governor has resumes from these people.
Well, why don't we have them? Why don't we know, who's gonna,
Are you in possession of the resumes?
I am.
will you share them with council?
I will read their resumes. There's certain things on there that they both said that they don't want here. Obviously, Mr. Frank has been approved 3 separate times by this very council to be appointed to the Planning and Zoning, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and to the DDA. So his resume, I think, really needn't be gone over. The council's seen that many times. Keith Provost, I'm prepared to read to the council what he sent to the state and he sent to me.
Well, I guess my preference would be that if we do read that would be at that item number 2. And right now, again, we're back to the agenda. Does anybody have any issues with the agenda as it stands?
I just want to voice my standing objection to the fact that the mayor raised the issue of the open meetings. It was a topic of discussion, and I still would like to have an answer from council as to whether this fell within or without an Open Meetings Act violation, because I believe it does not, for the reasons stated. And I think that's important for not just us to know, Bob, but for all of our people to know, because that Open Meetings Act thing is thrown up all the time as some kind of preventative to any discussion whatsoever.
I'm going to defer to the mayor on that. The attorney's got 2 items on the agenda. If the mayor wants to allow him to have some discussion on the Open Meetings Act at that point, can I get a motion to accept the agenda for tonight?
I'll move to accept it, and then I want to make it clear, I have no objection to either of these people necessarily. I was just the process I was concerned with, so I want to make that clear.
Councilman Hayes has moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, turn the meeting back over to the mayor. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Keenan. I'll ask for a motion for approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of June 10th.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hayes, supported by Mr. Templin. Is there any discussion? I hear none. I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is carried. Approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of June 24th.
Motion.
Supported. Moved by Mr. Councilman Templin, supported by Councilman Cisco. Is there any discussion of that item? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. We're going to go to, this time, to citizens' comments, and somewhere here I've misplaced my, just bear with me.
All the rules.
For the rules. They were up here, oh, here they are, excuse me. Okay. An individual may only speak on an issue after the individual has been recognized by the chairperson. Comments from the floor shall be made at the podium at the front of the council table or such other area as designated by the chairperson. Prior to an individual speaking from the floor, the individual shall identify themselves and state their address for the record. The individual shall also identify any group they are representing. All comments shall be directed only to the chairperson. Speakers are not to address other members of the council or members of the audience. Each member of the public may speak for up to 3 minutes on council agenda items and 5 minutes at the end of our regular agenda. A delegation or group will be allowed to speak up to 10 minutes. Unused time is forfeited after the speaker relinquishes the floor. All written statements should be given to the city clerk prior to the meeting so that copies may be made available to the members of the public body. No individual shall be allowed to make any defamatory attack or invasion of another individual's personal life. There shall be no questions, comments, discussions, or attacks regarding anybody's personal life. The chairperson shall immediately rule out of order any person who begins to bring up such issues. The chairperson does not, any member of the council may, by calling a point of order, request the chairperson to rule the offending party out of order. If the chairperson does not rule the offending party out of order, any council member may call for appeal of the decision of the chairperson. If the decision is overturned, the offending person shall be deemed as being out of order. If the person making the comments is allowed to continue, the person who is being challenged or whom comments are made against shall be entitled to make an immediate rebuttal. For purposes of these rules, as they relate to elected officials or city officials, the term personal life shall refer to anything other than that which is said or done in the person's official capacity as an elected official or in the person's official city capacity. Members of the public may question the speakers, but members of the public body are not obligated to answer any questions or make any statement on the issue raised or discussed by the speaker. Issues may be referred to an appropriate body, department, or individual for investigation and review. No person or group shall be allowed to disrupt the meetings or proceedings. Any individual who fails to comply with these rules after having first been warned by the chairperson to cease such actions shall be ordered by the chairperson to leave and or be ejected from the meeting. Thank you for your patience there. Okay, citizens, please.
Ray McGusson, citizen of Allen Park, Quant. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Couple of things. Number one, city ordinance says you will have 2 meetings a month. You only had one. It's required that we have two. So when we can't have one, I think it's up to the city council to go ahead and figure out when that date's going to be replaced. One day, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, real easy. But since we lost Tuesday, the last meeting, no city council meeting. You're against the city ordinance. Let's talk about the announcements. When it comes to individuals being appointed by you, Mr. Mayor, I believe our city charter, and quote me if I'm wrong, it's appointment. And our city council is supposed to go ahead and then approve it. When it comes to individuals that is so important to go ahead and be on a review team, I don't see a problem with those individuals before they are approved or reviewed or brought up in a meeting like this. And then you can sit there very easily, just tell the citizens what their qualifications are. It's not a big thing. We appointed you, Mr. Mayor, to be the mayor. I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. You are not a strong mayor. City Council, you've been appointed by and elected by us citizens. Please, make sure you have a voice in these very important announcements. I think it's very important. I don't know these individuals myself. I'm sorry, I just don't know them. It's very simple to go ahead and have that. Open Meetings Act, one person does not qualify for a meeting. So my understanding now, Mr. Mayor, and you can go through the attorney at a later date when maybe I can make my comments and you can answer, is very simply this. Are you trying to say that when a city councilman asks for an opinion through any of you, that the open meeting, that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act, one individual? No. Open Meetings Act does not require that. One person is not an open meeting. Two is not an open meeting. And was not a vote, was not being taken. It was just maybe a misunderstanding by Councilman Hayes. They just wanted a qualification, that's all. Thank you very much for my time.
Good evening, Council. Al Wachinski, Vine Avenue. I have a very simple question. Where is Mrs. Parker? We have not had Mrs. Parker at
Excuse me, Mayor.
3 of the 4.
We need to limit it to agenda items? Unless
Well,
it's
this is
falling
going, I'm
under
going,
the
we have a missing emergency manager.
Well, you can comment at the end of the, right, I think the councilwoman is correct. It's not an agenda item.
It was the last one.
Can we make any comments about the flood?
You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brian Diebel, Allen Park. I have a few comments regarding the administrator report. There's a few items I'd like her to discuss during the report. First of all, the executive order number 36 that calls up the final budget. The final budget, the revenue was approximately $20 million for the general fund, and the expenses were $17 million. Now, this does not include the $3.3 million for a loan. Now, I'd like to point out a couple of things with those numbers. That's a $3 million surplus. Now, I'd like to have the administrator in her report comment upon the fact that we had to pay $400,000 that went directly to our taxes for a judgment when we clearly had the money. The cash flow at the end of the year, as reported, was $2.6 million. There was a positive balance in April and May, and also throughout the last quarter there was a positive balance, and the least of it was $1.6 million. We clearly had the funds. So in your administrative report, please explain to us why we had to pay additional taxes when we clearly had the money and a check could have been written to Ford Motor Company. Second of all, we did not pay anything for the $2.6 million we owe for the pension fund. Now, we have a surplus of $3.1 million, and we have a cash flow positive of $2.6 million. We didn't pay a penny towards that $2.6 million. My fear, and please in your report let us know, that you're going to do the same thing, that you're going to go through the courts and have it put on our tax rolls. Many people are talking about this, and I'm fearful that what's going to happen. A judgment is going to go on our tax rolls. Please, in your report, explain to us that that's not going to happen and what you're going to do about paying it down. We didn't pay a penny towards that, and we have the money to pay for it. If we didn't have it, if you weren't worried about some of the cash flow, you could have saved some of the money, but you could have made a big dent in the $2.6 million. There's no reason why we're not paying for that. And there's no reason to get the loan at this point in time either. Also, during your report, please talk about the flooding and what remedies the citizens have and what you're doing with the state to get some benefits for the citizens here. Also, the fire authority is starting to make the rounds around here. And that sounds like that's just another millage coming through. So in your report, please address these items. Thank you.
Yay, Brian. Can I ask for, just for clarification, please? When the citizens come up to speak on agenda items, the administrator's report, if there's no report, I mean, what is qualifying questions on the agenda? I cut Mr. Legensky off because of that, and we got the next person. I was trying to ask you if that was the administrator report, but I don't think it came out that way. So could we just, for clarification, because I don't want to keep cutting people off or asking the question, I'm sorry.
Thank you. There actually are going to be 4 items that I'm going to talk about. 3 are basically confirmations or announcements. Details will be left up to Mrs. Parker. When she comes back, she has been the lead on most all of those things. And then finally, as you see with the screen, there will be a PowerPoint, and we will talk about the rain incident that occurred August 11th.
Mr. Chairman, I respect Ms. Gavarecki's point of view. However, with the dearth of information we get, I think to try to elicit some idea what the administrator's report is probably a good thing. So I would give a lot of leeway to the citizens to say what they think they need to say to get some information out of this city that's almost impenetrable at this stage.
I totally understand with what you're saying, but without any items actually on there as to what she's talking about, I don't feel that there should be a question at that time. They can ask it at the end, but I do understand, and their points are valid and well taken, but I'm just saying without there being an item on there for them to talk about, they don't know what she's talking about, and they can ask that question at the end. So, thank you.
And I would just chime in to say that I don't think it's unreasonable for the administrator or emergency manager, if they have 4 items, to list what they are underneath.
Here, here.
As everybody else has on there, so then we would know what the questions are.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just tell you what my interpretation is. When they say administrator's report and they have no action, any person should be able to come forward and say, I would like in the report this item.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
And I understand that a lot of those items are not going to get reported on in any event, but
Okay.
at least it expresses the citizens' interest, and it may actually prompt a response, because it may be easy to give and she's got it ready to go. But that's my interpretation. If the council wants to vote it a different way, I'm certainly willing to listen to that. Okay. Any other citizens commenting at this time? I see none coming forward, so we will go with much anticipation to the city administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things, actually some real positive things that I want to report on, but I really don't want to steal the thunder from Joyce Parker. who truly has spent the time that she's been here trying to negotiate and effectuate these activities. So number one, let me confirm that the city has now sold the 104 acres that are referred to as the Southfield lease properties. We have sold those parcels to an entity called Time Equities that has its principal office on Fifth Avenue in New York, New York. The amount, the total consideration is $12 million, and it is a land contract for 7 years. The closing was scheduled for last Friday and has taken place, and so we have, in effect, sold the property. That is something to be very pleased about. Second of all, there was a hold and wait, if you will, on the emergency loan. And as some of you may have heard, the state has now given the go-ahead, particularly for that portion of the emergency loan, which was applied for some months ago, that concerns the delinquent pension contributions. And so it is my understanding from Mrs. Parker that the closing on that will take place probably by mid-September. And finally, there has been numerous questions over the last number of months concerning any kind of a reimbursement agreement from Fordland having to do with our police and fire services. And I believe that there has been an amendment to the agreement, and they are finishing that up. The details I'm going to leave for Joyce Parker because I'm not sure that all signatures have been applied to the document yet. So when she gets back, she'll give you the details of that. So those are the 3 items that I wanted to confirm and announce. And like I said, any follow-up questions you might have are best posed to Joyce Parker. She has all of the details concerning that. Last and certainly not least, as you all know, because all of us were affected probably directly or indirectly by the rain incident that took place on Monday, August 11th. And unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, the power went out here. We couldn't get even the generator to crank it up so that we could hold a meeting and give you some information at that point. So tonight, what I've asked, and Tom Wilson, our DPW director, is here to give you, is a PowerPoint. He's going to take you through what took place, what kind of rain we looked at, what kind of response took place, and also a little bit of information about putting together the information and getting it to FEMA, and when FEMA is going to be in Allen Park. So I will turn this over to Tom Wilson, who will take you through the PowerPoint.
Good evening, council, mayor, elected officials, and the public. I'd like to take this time, I'll bring up the PowerPoint here real quick. And we're going to be talking about the rain incident of August 11, 2014. That incident was fairly large, so I'm going to start with the precipitation volume, or the volume of rain that we had at that time.
Mr. Wilson, excuse me, why don't you just pull the mic out in front of you as you're looking at your screen, and that, I think,
all right.
we'll get a recording better.
Detroit Metro Airport reported 4.6 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, with 2.6 inches of rain between the hours of 5 and 7 p.m. There is a rain gauge at Michigan and Oakwood, confirmed by the city of Dearborn, 5.8 inches of rain, with 3.5 inches of that rain falling between 5 and 7 p.m. So to put that in perspective, I did a little math here. 4,483 acres in Allen Park with 55% of that as an impervious surface. That came from SEMCOG. That's like SEMCOG numbers, okay? I then used the USGS data system to come up with the gallons that fell in Allen Park between 5 and 7 that night. It is 625 million gallons of water. To put that into perspective, that would be 14,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools falling on the city of Allen Park within 2 hours. Unprecedented ever in the history of any community in southeast Michigan, okay? And again, that was obviously more than anything happened in July at all. So what did we do to respond to this? Well, the first thing that happened was the director of DPS, which is me, along with the emergency manager and the city administrator, sat down and talked about what we could or couldn't do, what was available to us, what action should we be taking. Crew started that morning at 7:30, understanding that we have people out at the basin that watch the weather. I, in turn, watched the weather. I didn't expect, obviously, 6 inches of rain. They started at 7:30 a.m. on their regular shift on Monday morning, and they went home. The two gentlemen at the basin went home at 7 p.m. Tuesday night. So they put in their hours as much as they possibly could. Crews were out checking catch basins throughout the city, cleaning off the debris in the roads. The roads flooded, and the roads flooded because we couldn't take the water in quick enough. A catch basin is designed to take in about a half a CFS. It rained more than that. And CFS stands for cubic feet per second. It just couldn't take that kind of water. So about 7.36 gallons per second is what that means in layman's terms. When we had reports of water in basement, our crew spent the night checking manholes to make sure that we were down and running, to make sure that we weren't backed up. The basin out there holds about 10.5 million gallons of water or sewage. It was filled throughout the night, throughout the day actually it was filled, and throughout the night it was filled. So that's what we were doing that night. All 9 sewer pump stations were checked to make sure that they were running at full capacity. They were. We had no breakdowns in any of our sewer pump stations at all. We did have some problems, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The power out at the basin, Detroit Edison, we lost power from Detroit Edison. 10 seconds later, my generator kicked on. It runs the complete plant. It has enough power to run the complete plant, and it ran the complete plant with no interruption to service at the basin, which handles everything south, basically south of 94. There's a little portion south of 94 that goes to Detroit, but most of the city is in that area. So we checked on that. The basement and the basin took on a little bit of water. We weren't exempt to water in basement, just like your homeowners weren't exempt to the footing drains pumping water in your basements. It just couldn't get away from your houses fast enough. We did have a problem. We did put a pump in. We did have one of the actuators on one of the valves go underwater. It did take on water, but it continued to work. So dealing with the trash removal was another one of our issues. And that was one of the issues that we sat and talked with the emergency manager and Karen. And part of what we did was we negotiated with Republic Waste for our trash hauler for the cost of removal. It is in excess of what our contract allows. I mean, our contract has a no limit on garbage, but in an excessive amount of garbage like we have, or an incident like we have, there obviously, that's an extenuating circumstance that falls outside of the contract. Nobody puts things like this in a contract. So we negotiated with them to pick it up. Trash company's contract and plans were made to pick up the damaged property. So anything that you had damaged, put it out to your curb on your trash day and we will get it. I can tell you that they picked up a lot of garbage. I don't have the numbers yet from Riverview. I talked to the person at Riverview today. Their numbers are up about 160% of what they typically pick up. So they're up that high. But they don't have the numbers for me yet out of Allen Park. So part of our problem is that people just think they can or some people think that just take it out to the curb and dump it on the curb and the gentleman will pick it up. And in most cases we do, but here's other rules. We need you to put it out there in bags or in cans, not to weigh more than 50 pounds. And I know that that might mean a lot of bags out there, but we're way better off having more bags than heavy bags that the guy can't pick up. Those are pretty big guys on those trucks in most cases, so, but 50 pounds is the limit. We need you to cut in 4-foot length strips and tied the carpet and the padding. Okay, can't weigh more than 50 pounds. These are human beings that are picking this stuff up. And the large bulky items, if you get them out to the curb, we'll eventually get them. I know that we've missed a few in spots. I don't disagree. We've missed some of it. But if you do these things, I can then force the garbage company to go back and pick it up if they miss it. Okay? So we'll continue to see those kinds of things. Flooding occurs on major road underpasses. We had a couple underpasses that went underneath water, specifically Oakwood at Southfield and Oakwood down by Baker College. And I can tell you that MDOT and Wayne County are responsible for the maintenance of those roads. Those are their responsibility. When I went out to Baker College on the last day when they were repairing that pump, I talked to a Wayne County roads manager, and he told me that kids were actually jumping off the overpass on Southfield into the 14-foot deep water. Okay, but part of the good news is, if there is any good news here, is that those flooded underpasses kind of helped us within our community because those underpasses or those pumps pumped to the Reek drain into the Ecorse Creek. So that reduced the amount of flow into those two creeks and river to allow that water to get out quicker. So what was there was removing, those actually became retention basins for us. So although it was bad, we couldn't get traffic in and out of the hill. We trapped some people up at Baker College. 60 students were trapped at Baker College overnight. The fire department, along with a couple other departments, helped out. The school district loaned us a couple of buses. Everybody was involved in the city. Every department was involved in doing all this, and we got those 60 students out of Baker College. About Thursday is when they reopened the road, and late Wednesday night is when they could actually get their cars back out of there. So, information was collected by residents. All the residents who left me a voicemail on the DPS line over on White Street there, we returned the phone calls. We have been paying overtime since the flood to get people informational letters back to them when they reported it. We also made an attempt to call everybody. If you weren't home, I'm sorry. If there wasn't a voicemail left, I'm sorry. There was times at which the phone system was overloaded. So if you didn't get a return call from me, I might not have got your information. You thought you left a message and we might not have got it because it was so overloaded. We are still taking somewhere between 15 and 20 calls an hour over at DPS. So that's kind of our problem. But we'll continue to work through it. The first 400 letters went out. We're asking for the people to fill out the forms that says what you had damaged. And I'll show you where that becomes important later. We continue to accept the forms and we'll continue to send the letters out. You have up to 45 days from the day that you know that you had a problem. So if you were on vacation for 2 weeks, you have 2 weeks and 45 days. So we understand that, okay, whenever anybody figures it out. So continue to send the letters in, continue to pull the form off and mail them in or call DPS. Reporting to FEMA. The information was handed over to FEMA on Friday, August 15th. What we had, there was 398 basements flooded at that point that we had reported on. And we turned that over to FEMA at 3 o'clock that day. The mayor was there and we turned that over. So the meeting was also held today at 10 o'clock this morning for all the communities in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. The meeting laid out a timeline for the preliminary damage assessment, and that damage assessment is being done by teams from FEMA. There's actually 3 teams from FEMA. One has been assigned to Detroit. One started out in Dearborn today, and one started out in Royal Oak today. They will eventually get to us, okay? They are not leaving. So Wednesday or Thursday, they will get to one of our communities. This is the preliminary. They will not be going in houses. They will be talking to citizens to see what the assessment is or what damage they had, but they are not going in to assess. That is at a later date. We've had a report of somebody as an imposter, as a FEMA representative trying to get into homes. If somebody shows up at your home and says they're with FEMA and they want to get in your house, your first response should be dial 911 and call the police department. There is somebody trying to get in your home, unauthorized, okay? So that's what's going on. When they come out to assess, you'll see them in state police cars. I got that word today. They will be out in state police cars. There'll be a caravan with state police cars carrying the FEMA people. So there'll be no doubt. Everybody has ID. Everybody has badges. It is no doubt about what they're doing. But they will not be going in basements at this time. Okay, so a representative of the city administration will be available to take FEMA team throughout the city, and I'm going to show you a map at the very end where we have listed and mapped out every single basement that we've had reported, and we're up to 731, I believe the number is now. All information will be sent to Governor Snyder for determination of the findings. So because he has declared an emergency does not necessarily mean he'll declare a declaration to send to the president. That will be his decision based on the information that he gets from Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County, and from FEMA. So that decision has not been made by the governor's office yet. He may request a presidential declaration. We anticipate he will, but again, we have no idea. What that means is we have no idea if it will include public, private, both, none, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County. They can go down as small as a particular city and pick just cities. Typically, they have told us that they do counties, so whole counties at a time. They typically don't get any smaller than a county, but they have in the past, so it's nothing that is shocking. So those assessments are being done as we speak, and they'll be in town either Wednesday or Thursday, I believe, this week. So here's really what we have. 731 homes we reported with water in the basement. We still have calls coming in, so I'm going to assume that we're still going to have some more with it. The Wayne County Emergency Response Center was activated, and all reports were sent to the response team. So all those reports, I hand-carried the thumb drive today and handed it off to Wayne County today. So all 731 have been reported, and we have mapped them all for them, okay? Residents in need of further assistance can call 211. It's like dialing 911, but you dial 211. 211 will give you assistance for flooding if you're a senior, if you don't have anybody to get it out of your basement, if you have a furnace and you can't afford it, if you're anything that is outside the realm, there's an awful lot of public and community groups that will help you out. Okay, so that is a number that you can call, that you can pass along to the citizens and they can call. Myths and rumors. This is one that I got asked to do, and I guess it just kind of points out some of the things that people quite don't understand, because I heard it all for the last 2 weeks. Did you open the valve? There is no valve. Okay, there is no magic valve. I wish there was. There isn't. There isn't a magic valve. There are valves out at the basin. They are electronic. It fills the basin. The basin is separated into 3 separate sections, holding about 3.3 million gallons each. Those work flawlessly. Okay, but there is no valve to open up. Okay, there is redundancy inside of the sewer system here that is unique to Allen Park. You won't see it in the last 2 cities I worked in. You have a basin down there that can handle and store 10.5 million gallons. Then the pipe surcharges and goes back at the downriver tunnel that you paid for, and then it dumps over the weir. There is no valve to open. When it gets up so high, it dumps over the weir or over the dam end and goes into the tunnel, okay? When that is full, it goes past that to 2 pump stations that we have that will pump directly into the river. We pumped in excess of 20 million gallons of water and sewage into the drains in this last event, okay? So we were surcharged to the point of turning the pumps on, and that's why we have people out there 24/7, because when we start to see it surcharged, we're going out making sure the pumps are ready to turn on. Because eventually it goes over the weir, the tunnel fills up, and that's where we're at. So I just wanted to point that fact out. There is no magic valve. I really wish there was, but there just isn't, okay? So why didn't you turn the pumps on? We did, and some of my employees had flooded basements, so it wasn't something that we could have stopped or accumulated. All 9 Sewer pump stations were operating at full capacity throughout the event. We did not have any problems at all. They were all up and running. Yes, we flooded a mechanical room up at Baker College, but the pump still continued to work. So those are the kind of things. I suppose this is another 100-year storm. That's what I've been told probably 25 times. I've been told it once this week alone, okay? This phrase is kind of a unique phrase because people believe it means how much rain you got. And that's not what it means. It's a probability of whether you'll get that storm again. It's a 1% chance of that storm happening again in the next 100 years. But again, probability, if you look at the lottery, 1 in 15 million to hit the lottery, and there's people that have won the lottery more than one time. So probability numbers are just that, probability numbers. They are not talking about, oh wait, if it's 1 in 100 years, then I won't have another problem for 99 years. That's not how it works, okay? It's a statement that is made. The design standards are nothing to do with a 100-year storm. There's design standards, and that's kind of where this comes from. There's design standards that call for 10-1, so they call it a 10-year, 1-hour storm, and that's about 2 inches of rain. And there's a design standard that says 24-hour, 25-year storm event. There's a design standard for that, 4.3 inches of rain. But there is no design standard for a 100-year rain. It just is not that. It's a probability number, and that's what they use. So that is kind of a hard explanation, and obviously we didn't win the lottery when it rains and fills our basements, but I just couldn't figure out another way to explain it to people, so that's what I did. Okay? The street flooded. That is why my basement flooded. That is not true. There is no direct connection between your sanitary sewer and the road storm drain at all anywhere in this city that we know of. Okay? If you have a sump pump, your pump pumps or should pump to the storm drain out in front of the house. If you have just footing drains around the basement and no sump pump, it does go to the sanitary sewer. And that's really what caused most of our flooding. It was not, when you opened walked into your house after being outside and you walked in, most people did not smell raw sewage, okay? I haven't yet had a report to say somebody smelled raw sewage. They said it was clear water. That's your footing drain water. It just couldn't get out. The pipe just isn't big enough around your home. We had sump pumps that got overtaken. I heard from a few residents that their sump pump literally got overtaken by the rain coming into their footing drains. So their 1.25-inch sump pump just couldn't keep up with the 3-inch drain tiles that are around their basement. So it didn't matter how big the pipe is. It doesn't matter what we did. You can't get it away from your house. It's going to flood your basement. It's going to come up through the floor drains. The 2 floor drains in your basement are typically hooked to your footing drains, and the one over by your laundry tub is typically hooked to the sanitary sewer. So that's where you're going to get the problems, okay? The city has done nothing to reduce the water in our basements. Well, that's kind of, I did a little research, and the city of Allen Park was part of the Wayne County downriver sewer system, which is everything south of 94. Over $300 million was spent to create the tunnel to hold back the water to the treatment plant so that we could treat it so we didn't flood basements. So that's a $300 million, and that's when I talk about the weir. When the water ran over the weir, when that pipe surcharges, the water runs over the weir, we're part of that $300 million investment. And if you want to see what that cost you, look on your taxes. It's called the EPA levy. That's what you'll find it, okay? The city constructed a $20 million tunnel by itself, paid for it by themselves, and it goes underneath I-94 and underneath Southfield there. And it picks up the north end of town. You have 2 separate sewer systems. That sewer system discharges the Detroit system. The Detroit system was surcharged, but was still taking water. I have found no indication, and I still don't have the report yet, because again, the mechanical room went underwater, so we're still looking for data out there. But I have no report of any sewer backup. We had a lot of drains, and a lot of footing drains, and a lot of things along the creek that flooded. But actual raw sewage backing up in the basements, we did not see. Okay. So I have questions, but I'm going to escape out of this real quick. And I'm going to go down right here, and I'm going to bring up the map that, so let's bring up the map so I can zoom this in a little bit and help us out here a little bit. Let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see this is up north of 94 in Southfield. We had a couple 3 there. Okay. then we had a few north, okay? So when you start looking at this, this is not a sewer bag. These are footing drains. This is too much water in the system. I can't get it out. I can't get it there. If you had a real sewer backup or a blockage somewhere, everybody gets it. It doesn't just, I've had a lot of reports and a lot of calls lately about how come I flooded, but each neighbor on each side of me didn't get any water in their basement. And really it's about the footing drain issue. It's not about the sewer, okay? So what we did is we mapped all 731 of these for FEMA. And you can see that there's some areas that have more. So you start looking here, and then you start looking at what happened here, because you got some in a row here. So we started looking at that. And then in the backyards here, because the sewer runs through the backyard, what happened on this side? Okay? So that tells me, typically, that we don't have a real sewer problem. We still have a stormwater problem. We still have a lot of water around basements and things that's causing that. Typically, you see it on both sides of the street if you're going to see that. And we're just not seeing that. So some of this is used, as I use this information, to look at the sewer system to say, is there something that we could do? Replace a pipe, look at a pipe. Is there a blockage in the pipe? Is there something that's standing out to me? And I don't, typically at this point, I don't see anything. We can scroll through the whole city here. And zoomed in so you can kind of see. But again, it just doesn't show like every single house on every block, or one block that got every single house. It just doesn't show that. So that leans us really towards the footing drain issue and the drains around the things. And of course, 625 million gallons of water went somewhere. And we know where it went, so in some of the basements. Okay, so you keep going down, you scroll down. And I just want to point a fact out here. Here's the basin right here. It has 10.5 million gallons. And there is no real area here that shows up. Maybe these few houses here maybe could claim that, except for that's not where the line runs, but the line actually runs this way. So, but that particular, I would take a look at this area if I was looking at any area. You got a few houses on both sides of the street that got it, so. But again, there's nothing that really jumps out to the DPW director or to the engineers at all that says that we did something wrong, or we didn't have a pump running, or we didn't do something that made any sense. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm very proud of the DPW workers. I have 13 of them total right now. Those guys worked through the night, the next day. Some of them worked 24. Some of them worked 30 hours in a row. Went home for 8 and came back again. Then we had a storm where it blew 4 or 5 trees down. They were back in again that night. We've had water main breaks since then. They have put in a lot of hours. They do get paid for them, but it's still extremely tough on them. That's a lot of hours to put in. So that is my report. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for them.
Councilman Gavrek.
Can I just ask one question on your map?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. So my entire block flooded, and I don't see every single dot out there. So how important is it for them to call and report the flooding?
Very important, because I can take a look then at is there something else that we could do?
Okay.
Okay. It's very important that I get all the information, because I'm just using the information that I currently have, and that's all I can do. So yes, if anybody has a flooded basement that hasn't reported it, it will definitely help the DPS department to understand it, and the engineering department to understand what, if there is anything we can do, we surely can use this kind of information to help us out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council people?
Oh, yeah. I forgot all about that. Garbage. The state of Michigan and the MDEQ approved the mixing of compost with garbage for the next 90 days. And the reason they did that is because the garbage men obviously don't have enough equipment to pick up this massive amount of garbage that's in southeast Michigan right now. So there is an approval by the state to mix that with no fines or penalties to the garbage companies. So you will see some of that.
Mr. Chairman?
Council have questions?
Yeah,
Councilman
couple
Hayes.
things, please, Mr. Wilson. One, how much does the grade up to your house impact how much water you're going to take in your house drains? I've always been given to believe that if you look at a house where the grade is coming towards the brick, you're gonna have a leaky basement on a soft rain, not to mention some fierce rain like this. And I know that the only time I ever had water in my basement was one time I went outside, and sure enough, the grade was kind of going towards the house, and I put several bags of topsoil and just literally made like a little mound so it ran away from the house. I've never had water again. And I just wonder how many of our citizens are aware of the water always wins. It'll find the low point, eh? So if we can build up that grade, I'm sure it could deter some of it. Secondly, I'd like your comment as to what expectation. Okay, FEMA comes in, let's say the governor declares an emergency or whatever, disaster area. I overheard a conversation on the radio with Brooks Patterson saying that the citizens don't expect a check. If anything, it's a loan. Now, I don't know how true that is, but he said that when FEMA does something, they authorize low-interest loans, but they're not going to hand somebody a check for $10,000 because their basement was flooded, I don't think, unless you know otherwise. So I don't want to get our citizens all out there thinking, oh, good, if we only get this declaration, the check's in the mail kind of thing.
I can tell you the check isn't in the mail. Yeah, I can tell you that it probably won't be in the mail. I would be shocked if they did individual, but they could. There has been times when they've gone in and done individual assessments and paid off individually on homes. It is a very rare occasion when they do that, and it's typically not in a flooded issue, okay? They're looking at some of those things. So low-interest loans are absolutely a lot of what they do to help out people. And it also is based on, as I was told today, it's based on the age of the population, and it's also based on the income of the population. So one of the questions they're going to ask when they come out is your income under or over 20,000? They don't ask what your income is. They just want to know, are you above or below it? Okay? And then, are you a senior or not? Okay? That fits into the determination. But basically, it will be, we have been told that they don't believe they're going to do individual check writing. That's more for hurricanes or tornadoes or.
One final question. What I've heard, and I was away during this event, but what I heard while I was away and after I've been back is that notwithstanding this excellent presentation you gave tonight, what I was hearing was that the citizens had not seemingly got any kind of notice on the TV or some kind of broadcast. I don't know how they would have communicated it, but there was a feeling that the city was not responding. These people are at home with flooded bases, throwing out their carpet and belongings, and they didn't hear anything. Now, I don't know if they did or didn't, I wasn't here, but the sense I get and what I read and what I have heard and where I travel is that people were disappointed with the response from City Hall, if you will, you know. So.
Well, I can tell you that we spent a lot of time and hours in manpower just trying to respond to the citizens. And maybe that was a lacking part of what we should have done, what I should have done as a department head to make sure that the citizens understood everything. But it was a moving target. At the first response, the following day I had like 60 or 70 calls on the voicemail. Well, 60 or 70 calls wouldn't have made me respond the same way that 700 calls did. So it changes dramatically from day to day. If I could tell you what if I had the crystal ball to tell you what was next, you know, I don't. And I don't know if FEMA's going to come in and do individual. They could decide to do just public. They could do private. They could do a combination thereof. I don't know. They have written checks before. I just don't know the answer to that. So, but I would not consider FEMA the magic bullet. If I was waiting, you know, if you got a furnace that went underwater and you need to replace it, you need to replace it. I don't think you should be waiting for your FEMA check. I think if you can't afford it, I think if there's a problem, that 211 number will get you a hold of community groups that can help you out immensely. So, and it's to the water on your basement, absolutely get it away from your house. So if you can build the dirt up around your house, it absolutely helps. I tell people 10, 12-foot extensions on gutters aren't unreasonable. I can tell you right now that I have a house in Westland that I got the gutter extensions all the way out to the sidewalk, okay? It's about 18 feet. They go all the way out. And I strap them on there every time it rains, because I know what happens. If it gets down next to the wall, it's gonna get in my basement, I already know it. So, get the water away from your home, absolutely. 625 million gallons went somewhere, and a lot of it went around those footing drains. That is really what the maps currently are showing us, is that we surcharged mains, no doubt about that, but it was the wet weather flows. It was that water getting around the footing drains that was getting into our sewer mains. That's called wet weather flow, and that's what really caused all our problems.
Any other questions by council? Mayor Pro Tem
I'd
Keenan.
like to make a couple comments and a question if I could. As I discussed with you, I had the opportunity to call in on the phone meeting that took place a week ago yesterday, with Congressman Dingell and the emergency management team from Wayne County, and several of the folks from the county and state level that were trying to deal with the flooding. And I just want to concur with what you had said to Councilman Hayes. You had kind of talked about in your PowerPoint presentation the governor potentially sending something off to the president. I have had several residents come to me and say, well, back in, I want to say 2001, 2002, we got like a $2,000 check. And that's because there was a presidential declaration. FEMA will never give money unless it's presidential declaration. So that's a key thing to anybody that thinks they're going to get a check. The governor has to apply for that. The president has to approve it, and then it becomes a presidential declaration. And then there may be small. But the other thing I want to communicate is FEMA doesn't look at a finished basement. They look at that as a recreational area, and they do not remedy recreational areas. They will remedy as you kind of alluded to, the furnace, any kind of mechanical things down in the basement, or if you have a basement that is actually a living area that's on your title that shows that you have, for instance, we don't have a lot of them in Allen Park, but several people have a walkout basement where that's an actual living area. You have to have an egress, fire egress, all that. If your basement qualifies as an actual living area, then you may be able to get some remediation or something to that point. But they do not look at people that, like several of us here in Allen Park who finish our basements off to have more rec rooms or additional living space or whatever. FEMA does not recognize that. So I think it's important for people to know that also when you start to look at the FEMA things. And I do want to say, it was a very educational, and I'm sorry that the mayor is on the DCC, I'm his alternate, so he and I are the only two that get those emails, so I don't think the rest of the council was even aware of the meeting. But I did call in on it, and it was very educational. Several things that they talked about that really don't mean a lot, but when you look at people that say, my house is just demolished, it's totaled, they do a numbering system, which I'm sure you're aware of, is to 0 and 3. 3 would mean the house is never, ever going to be inhabitable again. It has to be torn down. 2 would be that it can't be remedied within 30 days. If it goes past 30 days, then it would be qualified as a 2. A 1 would be minor flooding, probably what they would consider what we had around here, and a 0 would be, really nothing, not nothing, but small, where you could just mop it up or something to that effect. But it was educational. But just to reiterate what you said, if you're looking for a check from FEMA, the best you're probably going to get is a low-income loan. And it's important that we get those numbers in, because that's going to help the governor make a decision as to send it off to the president to try to get that declaration. Without that, then there's no chance even at all about getting the money. But my question for you is, and I brought this up, I want to say 2 years ago, we had the folks from Wayne County come in and we talked about flooding in the basements. And really, they just said that there wasn't a whole heck of a lot they can do, to be honest with you. They said that they would have to pull eminent domain, tear down all the houses that go along the Ecorse Creek, widen it, and just the fact that they'd have to buy everybody's properties would just be exorbitant in cost, and they couldn't do that. Plus, you're uprooting people out of their homes and what have you. But my question to them then, and I don't think I ever really got an answer, and I'm going to defer to you you seem pretty educated on water flow, and Tom's Lawn and Garden, which is a company that's no longer in business. The property's for sale. Sits right on the Ecorse Creek, right over here down just this side of Outer Drive and Allen Road. It's not a huge piece of property, but it's not a small piece of property either. I asked Wayne County then why they didn't consider buying that parcel and tearing it down and making it somewhat of a catch basin, a retention basin, so to speak. dig that all out and just give the opportunity for more water to flow. And anywhere down the Ecorse Creek, quite frankly, where there's not homes, that you might be able to buy the property for reduced rates, or businesses that are no longer in business. I believe that, I don't hold me to it, but I believe it's with the bank, to go through and just widen it and give more room. Like you mentioned earlier in your report, that the underpass under Southfield and the underpass on Outer Drive under 94, they kind of served as retention basins and helped with some of the issue. So that leads back to my question to Wayne County several years ago. I'd like you to look at that and let us know if you think that there's any advantage at all to doing something like that, where we theoretically widen the creek and try to make it so we have more of a retention basin. If it's not, something, but I think, and I've been saying it for 2 years, we should be pushing Wayne County to do that. And anytime they have an opportunity to widen that creek, much like the Rouge River. I mean, I drove by the Rouge River every day after the flood, and it was high, but it never crested. Never, ever got above the concrete. So that's my comments and question.
Okay, well, I can answer some of that. Back about 10 years ago, the Ecorse Creek was looked at heavily by, especially Dearborn Heights was probably the leader in pointing out the fact that there had basement flooding around the Ecorse Creek. The Army Corps of Engineers were brought in to look at that system. Some of the plans along the way talked about retention basins. There is currently a number that was placed on taking care of the Ecorse Creek from one end to the other. So you really can't do anything with the Ecorse Creek unless you start at the river and work your way back, obviously, okay? So there's a lot of different things that they've talked about doing. The total estimate right now is sitting at about $1 billion. So although they spent the money on the Army Corps of Engineers looking at solutions, and there's about 4 or 5 different plans along the way, i.e. retention basins in different spots along the Ecorse Creek, purchasing some homes in Dearborn Heights. There was quite a few homes along the Ecorse Creek in Dearborn Heights that would have to be purchased. It's just in a floodplain. But short of that, finding a funding mechanism, again, they put in for that funding. Wayne County typically puts in for that funding for grants almost every year. But I can tell you that it's probably a long ways away from ever being a reality, just because of the costs associated with it. So they've created the floodplains. There is flood insurance, so all the people along the Ecorse Creek that were screaming about their flood insurance bill, because I've had those calls too here, I've got to pay $1,200 or $1,500. That's what the flood insurance typically is along the Ecorse Creek. They are now collecting on all those policies because they were covered under those policies. So that particular property you're talking about, whoever buys that will end up buying flood insurance if they happen to own that. We can ask the county to take a look at it again. I'd be happy to do that. Kelly Kay was the person in charge of that department, and she handles all the Wayne County stormwater ordinance and all the Wayne County ordinances. So I can absolutely take a look at that and see what we can do. Make a suggestion anyways. But there is a huge number to repair that, because it just isn't simply cleaning out a few trees. I mean, it's very complicated. It's a huge amount of water that flows down that creek.
Do we have any other council comments or questions? I'd like to make a couple comments. Somebody talked about trying to get communication. Well, on Tuesday, I think it was around 3 o'clock, somewhere between 1:30 and 3 o'clock, lightning struck City Hall, knocked out the transformer. We lost our power. That was one of the reasons we canceled our meeting. I think even though some of that power came back sometime Tuesday night, we just thought it was too late to try and conduct a meeting. But we didn't find out until sometime Thursday. I guess I found out finally. The county kept saying, how come you're not responding to my emails? The county had the lead, and Homeland Security, Mr. McGilvery, I think his name was, from Wayne County, was the point man on it. He says, Mayor, you're not responding. They called me up, and I says, I don't have any emails from you. I mean, I went through the trash and everything else on my email system. Finally, we found that the city wasn't getting any email even as late as Thursday. I think our IT people got us up and running sometime on Friday, but that was a problem here at City Hall because we had that happen to us along with all of the water problems that we were having. And I think that whole week, the whole city was principally dealing with water. The one good thing is I guess I'm getting a $1,000 gift for the city from Norfolk and Southern, who said we were very nice about asking them. They had to send their security crew so that Baker College could cross the Norfolk and Southern Rail, which is at the back here, to go to work while Outer Drive was flooded shut because they were supposed to start school on the 18th. And they needed to get their people in and talk to all of the students. All of their orientation got put out. But it was amazing how people work. Norfolk and Southern, under the Homeland Security Act, because we're a high-risk area, Detroit, nobody can go on a railroad track or cross it unless Norfolk and Southern security was there. So we couldn't, there's a gate there, as you know, at the end of Enterprise Drive, but it can't be opened without Norfolk and Southern security being present. But they were good enough to make certain they could do that and relieve the problems at Baker College. But that was a big issue all week with, and the people calling, lots of different people. I don't know how many calls I got. And a lot of them were, well, how do I clean my basement? And no one has ever told me that I was an authority on how to clean anything, but I did suggest, whether it was stormwater or not, please disinfect it and make certain you can kill any mold that's going to hang on those walls. That's the way I would go about it, but it was a trying situation. We're supposed to have another conference call, I think, the 2nd or 3rd of September with Mr. McGilvery and all of the affected communities. I think Wayne County.
Yes.
The FEMA plan says that the governor has until September 10th to ask the president for assistance.
That's correct.
And they're evaluating that. So I think we'll probably not see the governor act until after our discussions on the 2nd and 3rd. And I think that we should be pleased at the work that our people did in the city to minimize the damage. When you sit on that conference call and listen to some of the other communities around here and what they suffered, only thing I never thought I'd ever thank Judge Fikens for anything, but maybe separating our storm and sanitary turned out to be good, because one thing, it gave us additional pipes to store stuff.
Yeah.
That we put in, and that seemed, because there were communities, Southgate is well over 1,700 homes. They're roughly the same geographic size as us, populations, number of dwelling places.
Yeah, I've been in contact with probably 10 to 12 different communities, basically north of here, most of them. Dearborn, 8,000 basements, probably 400 or 500 homes with foundation issues. That literally the walls blew out because the pressure on the outside of the wall pushed the walls in, literally from the water, pushed the walls in. So those kind of issues, filled up basements all the way to the top, caught the electrical, completely destroyed the electrical. We had one garage fire here that I know of. So those are all the kinds of things. I mean, as a community goes, and that does not I don't want to minimize what happened here, because it wasn't. If it was your basement, it wasn't minimal. You thought it was the end of the, it was the end of things. But when you look at Troy and Warren and 18,000 homes in Warren, and they have combined systems up there. Berkeley, Huntington Woods, Berkeley, almost every house got hit. There wasn't almost every house. It was a 2 square mile area. They have combined sanitary and storm up there. They have nowhere to put the storm, so it's a combined system. They actually designed the roads to flood, to hold the water back. They don't allow 7.5 gallons to go through in a second. They allow like a half a gallon a second. Their roads flood on a half-inch of rain, so they're designed to do that, though. So I don't want to minimize what people went through here, but there is, if you want to look at what happened north of here. And again, they had more water than us, you know. Berkeley reported 6.6 inches. Oakland County has a rain gauge in their DPS yard. I happen to know the DPS director. 6.6 inches of rain, and over 4 of it ended up between 5 and 7 o'clock at night. So it's just an unheard of amount of water. And so I was shocked to see 625 million gallons of rain. Those are just, you can't compare that to any other storm that you've ever had here. So
Thank you for your report. I wanted to say too, I didn't mean to.
no problem.
Mr. Wilson, thank you, and
Thank you.
and thank you for all the time you put in, because you were there leading the workers to do what we needed to do to minimize
No
the
problem.
damage to
That's
the
why they
citizens
hired
in
me.
the city. Thank you. Move to the mayor, and I'd ask for a consent resolution on 1ABC. They're all door-to-door solicitations.
So moved.
Moved by
Supported.
Mr. Hayes, supported by Mr. DiGiulio. Just for the audience, the first solicitation permit, Todd Peterson of Army Security to sell security systems, a $300 fee to be paid. Solicitation permit by Angela Gomez, Shy Enterprise, Inc., to sell Kirby Cleaning Systems, $300 fee. Door-to-door solicitation permit, Gary Jones, Progressive LTD, to sell Comcast Cable with a $300 fee. So is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We've had a discussion of item 2. I will again say that I was approached by the emergency manager, who said that the governor had asked that I send 2 names forward to them. Obviously, I do also spend some time reading the charter and understanding it. Ask if we were to use the charter provisions, and they indicated to me, no, send them the names. That's what I did. They went up. I heard finally 2 weeks ago they have the resumes and they've asked for their applications. I don't know if that means that these people are going to be 2 of the 3 members of the review team. As I said, I thought Fred Frank was pretty well known to the committee because of his work on the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals, and also the DDA. He was voted by this council in those 3 positions, and he still serves on ZBA and DDA. This job does not consider a conflict with the charter as being a impermissible third service to the community. And one of the reasons, the people are supposed to meet at least once a month for 2 years. I had heard originally that the state was paying the people, but I find that all the review teams are not being paid, so it becomes a little harder to find people who want to serve for no pay. But I think they're 2 good men. Keith Prevost is currently has become a reverend, part-time associate at Allen Park Presbyterian Church, but he was the chief business manager, finance manager for 6 public districts, school districts in Wayne, Oakland, Macomb counties from 1973-2004. That's how I met him when I was on the Allen Park School Board. He was our finance manager there. I thought he was a fine accountant, and he has a doctorate in education from Wayne State University, an MBA from Eastern Michigan University, and his Bachelor of Science in Arts from Wayne State University. So I was told that I was supposed to make the announcement to the council, and that's why it was on our agenda tonight.
Can we ask questions on that?
Sure.
I'm just curious, and certainly I want to say, as Councilman Hayes did, I know Fred Frank, and I think he's a great guy, and I think it's a good pick. However, I am a little bit concerned about him serving on the DDA and in that position. Just whether it's a conflict of interest to the charter, I don't know, but it seems to me that if this is going to be the team that's going to review spending above $5,000, he may be pro or con to DDA spending, and that would have to be part of that would be approved. I'm not sure that, and I don't think that Fred would that there would be any improprieties with Fred. I think he's a great guy, and like I said, I think he's a great pick. But I don't know that he should continue to serve on the DDA and be in a review board position. That's my take on that.
Sure.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the only comment I had, and again, I don't want you to misapprehend what I was saying earlier. Now that I know that Ms. Parker asked you to announce people, I don't know that you were foreclosed from, advising us anyway, just saying, hey, Ms. Parker asked me, I'm proposing to do this, and whether you like it or not, or I hope you like it, or whatever. It would have just been the collegial thing to do, I guess, I was thinking. And again, I just found it surprising because I had no forewarning of this, and I saw nothing in the law about it, so it just struck me as, unusual. So I think sometimes in our future dealings, the best way, as I've said many times here, is the more communication we have, the better we are. The more we share, and again, I just reiterate my point that I don't think anything that discussion about it would have offended the Open Meetings Act in any form or fashion, because it's very clear it was not decisional, which is the operative caveat in having discussions. It was not decisional. The decision had been made, clearly. So I just wanted to make those points. And I don't know, I know Mr. Franks marginally. I don't know this other fellow. I've read some materials about his departure from his last role. I don't know what it means or anything else. I don't know enough about it to really comment. But I think we just have to rely on your judgment here, because you were authorized by Ms. Parker to make this nomination, and I guess we're stuck with it whether we like it or not. So anyway, my points.
Question, Mayor?
Councilman DiGiulio.
Are these the only two people that you requested on this, or did you have others in mind?
I was told to send two only.
And these were the only two? You didn't ask anybody else?
I did.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. How many others?
Remember, when they're working for free, and if they're still, working 9 to 5 or whatever their hours are, it's just hard for them to serve on these. So you have to look for certain types of persons.
We have a lot of people that serve for free. We have a lot of people that come to the meetings here and spend time with us for free too. So.
Sure, we do.
Of course, this is strictly your decision, so we're not going to have a vote on it, correct?
Right.
Well, then,
It's not strictly my decision. It's the governor's decision.
but you've recommended this to the governor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you're not going to give us the resumes. I mean, I'd like to see both of their resumes, because really, I don't know any of these two people.
I'd be happy to print them out after the meeting
Would you?
and give them to you.
Thank you.
I just got to redact certain things that people want to be protected from.
That's fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll go to Mr. Kavir, our attorney, city attorney, and deal with the two ordinances that are before us tonight.
Good evening. I'm asking for a motion to authorize the third and final reading of proposed ordinance 02-2014.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do we go to an open meeting at this point, Mr. Clerk?
Now who was the motion by? Was that Mr. Hayes?
Councilman Hayes and Councilman Pro Tem Keenan seconded.
Traditionally, what we do now is we open up to hear public comment on it. Anyone who has any comment?
And you would say that we would have to do each one separately?
Yes, yes. There is one on proposed ordinance number 2-214 about an amount of firewood. I don't know if that ever got resolved, but as it stands right now, you're adopting the ordinance, but it's not saying how much of the wood they can actually have on their premises.
There was a height limit on it.
Yeah, but then how many stacks could you fit in your backyard? And it's the pleasure of the mayor and council. That's just one of the things I was asked, is it in there? And No, it's not.
I don't know that we discussed how much you could have in your backyard. We discussed the distance from the perimeter fencing and the height and the distance off of the ground. Other than that, we did not discuss the amount or how many stacks you could
I
have.
know it was talked about, but I don't think we threw it out there, but I don't think we ever decided on it,
Yeah.
if that was part of it or not.
It was
What you're
the-
saying, I think, was the
height.
distance and the height.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if it,
Councilman Hayes, do you remember?
I don't recall, but if it would help, I'd happily withdraw my motion and, you know, see that we could meet on this. We have a meeting scheduled probably in the next month anyway. I think you had some items, Tina, you were gonna bring up.
Yeah, there's a few finishing items that needed to be brought.
It's better to do it right. I think if Mike's pointing
Yeah.
out that we have a
Yes.
defect, we should.
I agree, we can.
I'd withdraw my motion and ask that it be, you know, taken off the table at least until such time as we
Well,
have a chance to firm.
Can I ask, before we do that, can I ask the attorney, Mr. Colbert, is there an issue with us amending it or voting on it right now and putting it into the book so that we can at least get the firewood off the ground and then we can go back and amend it a second time? Right now, I don't believe we have an ordinance that's enforceable. I'd rather have this at least temporarily, and we may be able to go back in and, you know, the idea is to get the firewood off the ground because it attracts rodents and what have you. And this is the third reading of this. I would be more apt to want to get this in the books and come back and amend it later on if we have to.
I would just have to say, I think it was brought to my attention, it also was the amount that was supposed to be in the backyards as well, that the ordinance didn't address, so.
Right, and that's what we're talking about.
Right, I
How
know,
many stacks,
the
whatever.
amount, but not so much the height and the,
Well, but what I'm saying is right now, we currently have people that have wood on the ground.
okay.
And if we don't vote on this tonight, we won't be able to enforce that until we come back, in my opinion.
I'd go along with Bob on that.
But through the chair, what I'd just like to add through my experiences, you're creating a lot of process for something we could come back in 2 weeks. In order to amend the ordinance, we have to have a first and second again, then we have to publish it in the paper, then we have to wait a period of time, then you have to come back after so long, you have to adopt it again, so you have to publish again. So with something like firewood, we'd be publishing 4 times. And it's not like it's like $300. I think this one was about $89. It's gonna be for the full ad.
So are you saying, Mike, that if we just don't vote on this tonight and we go back and we change it, we don't have to do a first and second again?
No, because it was already
Well, that's not
published
my
as a
understanding.
first and second. You're done. You can,
But what was published isn't what we're talking about now.
no, well, basically it was, but it could change from the first and second to the third and final.
Okay.
So, and I just err on that caution because I thought you guys were given information, so.
I'm fine with that then. I thought we were gonna have to start the process over.
Are you suggesting we
Wait
withdraw
2
and table?
weeks. I promise, let me give a brief history. The last mayor and council, we had a perfectly fine firewood ordinance. It had the exact provisions, not all. This one's a little bit more detailed in combustibles. But we had an ordinance that said you had to keep it 6 inches off the ground and you weren't allowed more than 2 cords. Well, somewhere else in our ordinance, it had just mentioned firewood in another place and you have to keep it 6 inches off the ground. Well, through the recodification, they removed the one with the how much you're allowed, 4 feet from the property line, all that. And that is the only provision I think we have today, is it just has to be 6 inches off the ground. It's somewhere in there, and I know it is because I've seen it when they recodified.
And I'm good for tabling it.
But 2 weeks, I'll talk to the attorney. It'll be like 1 line to add.
Okay.
So could I ask that we withdraw and have the motion to table the?
Sure.
Mr. Hayes is going to withdraw, and Mayor Pro Tem Keenan, would you agree?
Yeah, well,
And I'll move to table.
And then we'll move to the 2 gentlemen will, okay, and we'll make it a second, all right? So the motion now is to table for a 2-week period. Well, should we just leave it open-ended for whatever reason?
I can have it. I have the electronic copy. I'm not an attorney. I don't want to copy, I'll
Okay,
be in touch with the
But
attorney.
you want it on the agenda next meeting.
yeah,
Yes.
table the next meeting then. Is that satisfactory to the movers of the motion?
That's fine.
Okay, any other discussion? Well, there can't be a discussion. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Gouvere, let's try the next one.
I'm asked for a motion to authorize the third reading by title only of proposed ordinance number 03-2014.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Keenan. Do I have a second?
Support.
Support by, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the voice.
Support.
Councilman Templin. I'll ask that we then open it for public hearing.
Can we maybe just read what the proposed ordinance is? I'm not sure everybody out there knows what it is. Or am I wrong?
The title.
The
I'll read it
title.
by title.
Yeah, oh, okay, the title. That's what I meant.
Oh,
Just
okay.
that paragraph right there. Thank you.
An ordinance of the City of Ellen Park Code of Ordinances repealing Article 32 Precious Metals and Gem Dealers in its entirety, and Article 2 Secondhand or Junk Dealers, and Article 3 Pawnbrokers of Chapter 36 Secondhand Goods, and readopting a new Article 2 Pawnbrokers, Secondhand Dealers, and Scrap Dealers of Chapter 36 Secondhand Goods to provide for additional regulations relating to pawnbrokers and dealers in secondhand goods. Would you like a little bit of history with this?
Please.
This amendment was brought forth by the police chief, and the primary intention of this amendment is to require pawnbrokers to do all of their filings electronically instead of on paper. Pawnbrokers need to keep track of who brings in material, and it's a way of tracking stolen goods. So it makes the process much more efficient.
Well, I would just add to that, if I could, Joe, and maybe you can clarify, that system, I believe, would be accessible by the police department.
Yes, they actually file it
Right.
electronically with
So
the
not
police
only will it be
departments.
filed electronically, the police department will have the ability to go in and see what is pawned, who pawned it, and it will help them in their investigations.
That's right.
Is any comments from the public on the matter?
Alan Wojcinski, Vine Avenue. Will this address the issue of that scrapper on Becker?
No.
That area is just a disaster. What can the city do about that house?
Mr. Chairman, the other day, I happened to call the chief because I noticed there were two big trucks full of stuff at Becker, and the chief said, thanks for calling. He was going to rush over there because he said they have certain restrictions on these folks. They're not to have more than one commercial vehicle at any given time. So he said, whenever you see that, let them know. So I would urge you, if you're near there and you see that, and you see the two vehicles in non-compliance, that you alert him, because Jim is on top of it. And he assured me he was anxious to make sure that they continue to comply. So I know it's probably not going to be perfect, but he's working at it.
They had 3 trucks in their driveway last week,
I saw it too.
and I've seen 2 trucks also. So we're just at our wits' end, or is there something that we can do legally?
Yeah, you're-
Persevere,
I would just
persevere.
say, if you want to bring that up when you come up in your 5 minutes, right now, this ordinance is about businesses. It's about pawnbrokers, jewelry stores, anybody that would take in secondhand metals on a professional basis, not people that are running businesses out of their house that aren't licensed. So, you're kind of
Okay,
little
this
bit
is
off
on a
topic.
professional.
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't in the listing. Okay, thank you.
I see no one else coming forward, so we will close the public hearing and ask for the council's intent motion to pass the ordinance?
I have a motion by Keenan, supported by Templin. This would be a third and final reading of ordinance number 3-2014 to adopt new regulations on Chapter 36 on secondhand goods and new Articles 2 titled pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers, and scrap dealers. Shall this ordinance pass? And we will start with Councilman DeGiulio.
Yes.
Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Pro Tem Keenan.
Yes.
Mayor Mategas.
Yes.
Councilman Cisco.
Yes.
And Councilman Templin.
Yes.
The yeses have it. This ordinance shall be published as prescribed by law, and a third and final reading has taken place. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Covier. At this point, we're at the citizens' questions and comments, and we're limited to 5 minutes.
Ray McGusson, City of Allen Park, Quant. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Mr. Mayor, it states here, citizen comments on agenda items. Mr. Wadzinski came up here and was going to make a comment on the flood. He was told it was not on the agenda. It was definitely on the agenda. It might not have been stated that because it's not on this agenda. And because it was not on this agenda, a lot of citizens, when they look at the agenda and this was not on the agenda, might very well not be here. So I would highly recommend, Mr. Mayor, and the rest of the City Council, and I see you shaking your head, Bob, that the citizens are informed a lot more of what, or better, what's on the agenda. Mr. Mayor, the report by the city administrator is very hard to go ahead and make any kind of comment on the city administrator report when there's no detail what the report's going to be. Please try to be more transparent to us. Try to inform us. I would like to also at this time, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, through our city attorney, to please answer my one question. Does one person constitute an open meeting?
Yes.
No.
Very good. So, stating that Mr. Hayes was in violation of the Open Meetings Act was a misinformation, because Mr. Hayes tried to get some information through the City Council and was more or less told that it wasn't going to be taken care of at that point, or his question was not going to be answered because it was going to be a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Can I jump in there?
Are you going to, my time?
Please ask questions.
I know, and the city attorney had leaned over just before and asked me that he wanted to deal with this issue, so I'm going to.
Yeah. I don't know if I wanted to, but I think we should.
Okay, can you please do me a favor?
Yes.
I'm only given, and I'm going to be honest, I'm only given 5 minutes. So you can please answer me when I get done, and I'm almost done. Okay? Mr. Mayor and City Council, I brought it up. 2 meetings a month. 2. We were flooded. You were out of power. City Council could have very easily says, we're going to go ahead and under the circumstances, reschedule that meeting at a later date. It's not very hard to do. You are our representatives. You represent us. We need your help. I did not get flooded, but my neighbors sure in the hell did. Now, Mr. Mayor, also, and City Council, you can always answer what I'm asking at one point at a time. You don't have to ask one person. Our city administrator, our emergency manager is not here, has not been here for quite some time. And a lot has been done within the city. kudos to us or to the individuals who are there. But in the same instance, city administrator report needs to be a little bit more detailed of what's going to be here. I want to thank you for your time and allowing me to come up and to speak. And if you would like to, please answer me.
All right. So this question pertains to communications with respect to electronic mail. The Open Meetings Act was created before, I don't know, well, it was 1995, it was amended. Our legislators did not address the situation of electronic messages. However, a lot of laws they don't keep up with the time. We just need to do our best to interpret the facts based on what the law currently says. So one question that was posed, and Mr. McGusson asked, if an email is sent out, does that violate the Open Meetings Act? No, it does not. That is not that's just one person expressing their opinion. There is no quorum, there is no meeting, okay? So that's an easy answer. The more difficult question is what if everyone on council is sitting at their computers and they're communicating with one another? Now, I looked into this some time ago. As of early this year, there was no case law on point. And as far as I know, nothing has come out since then. And the open meetings cases, they're all over the place. But there are a few cases which say if more than a quorum is at a meeting and everyone just sits there and they don't say a thing, that is not a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Okay? Clearly not a violation. So the law gives us some guidance there. The act, unfortunately, I had a crumpled up copy here in my briefcase because I don't know this word for word. But the act defines meeting means the convening of a public body at which a quorum is present. So you need to have a quorum present for the purpose of deliberating towards or rendering a decision on public policy. Now, courts have, over the past, basically, if they see council people talking and there's a quorum, it's pretty hard to argue that you're not deliberating towards rendering a decision. And you may truly not be doing that, but it sure looks like you are, and courts are quick to find that you're deliberating towards a decision. And I know when these emails are sent out, I don't think anyone's trying to violate the Open Meetings Act. But the problem here is the convening of a public body at which a quorum is present for the purpose of deliberating towards. So if you have a scenario, an email goes out and people start responding and communicating with each other, you really are convening a public body. And the act doesn't specifically say that, but to err on the side of caution, you really should not be communicating with a quorum of board members. Because if you do that, you open yourself up to a charge of violating the Open Meetings Act.
Can I just jump in? I'm sorry, I thought we were done, Joe.
The Open Meetings Act, I'm not going to quote the whole act, but it says all meetings of a public body shall be open to the public and shall be held in a place available to the general public. Okay? So, again, the argument is you're convening a quorum, and maybe you are, maybe you're not. It's a factual question, right? I mean, who knows if one person's online and no one else is, you could argue, well, there's not a quorum, it's just two people talking. But the most prudent approach, and to avoid having a judge saying you're violating the Open Meetings Act, is to avoid a scenario where council people are communicating back and forth with respect to, by means of emails. And I know I don't think anyone here is trying to violate the Open Meetings Act. I just think erring on the side of caution that communicating between one another opens this body up to that type of charge.
I just want to say, and I'm going to defend the mayor a little bit, because one of the first things that a lot of us did up here, the majority of us when we were elected, was we went out to a seminar that the Michigan Municipal League put on that was kind of to give us some ground rules as elected officials. And they cautioned us very strongly about replying to all and sending messages to all, and said you don't want to do that they can come in and take your phones and take your computers and somebody has to file a complaint. And I think that's the issue. The message that is at question right now was sent out to every council member. If the message would have went from Councilman Hayes to the mayor, then it would have been 2 people. Then it's not a quorum. And Councilman Hayes, and I'm not going to beat up anybody here, but has been warned and warned and warned about reply to all. I've actually had people here come up to me and ask me questions about, why don't you say this or why don't you say that? Because I'm very hesitant. I send a lot of emails, but I send them directly to the person I'm talking to and nobody else. So people don't know what I do behind the scenes, because emails get shared. For some reason, some of the emails that some people send out that get replied to all, even though there's only maybe 7 of us on the email, 50 people out in the audience have seen that email too. And so some of us up here that don't participate in the reply to all method, there's people out there that think, we're just sitting back on our hands and not doing anything. But the reality is I think in the mayor's case, and in a lot of the emails that go back and forth amongst this council, sometimes I will reply to all if there's relevance to it or something like that. But my training that I had at the MML, and the majority of us, and my personal habit is to try to reply to the person that I need to reply to, and not all the other 6 members of this board. And that email that you're talking about was to all of us, and that's where the gray area comes in.
I appreciate
This,
answer.
this is a comment, if I may, and I'm not going to beat this to death. There's no question but that, in my mind, but sending it to all represents a quorum. But the threshold fundament of this law is it has to be deliberative towards a policy decision. There is no policy decision. Now, I don't doubt that it's probably better practice to err on the side of caution, because some people may not be able to distinguish what's deliberation and decisional, and I'm quite clear that some of us don't understand that. But the fundament of the law is deliberative and decisional. If I'm not asking the mayor to make a decision, I'm not asking my colleagues to make a decision. I'm just saying, hey, where's this coming from? It's no different than if Bob sent me an email and said, what are you going to wear to the Christmas party? And he might send it to all of us. That's a quorum because we all got it, but it has nothing to do with the public policy of this body. And I think, Counselor, if you study that, and I think I've talked to several attorneys who agree with me 100%, it's the deliberative, decisional aspect of it that is the problem, not having a quorum. And that's all I'll say about that. And I'd welcome your rebuttal. But
Well, all I can say is you cannot, in the courts have consistently found that when council people are talking, how do you distinguish? Anytime you're communicating, you are moving towards a decision. And I don't know how you distinguish between not moving towards a decision. It's very difficult to explain that to a court. Your Honor, we weren't deliberating towards a decision. We were deliberating towards what?
Well, the facts are sticky things, and you'd have to show in that email where the decisional deliberative thing is. And I certainly didn't have any. You can look over and pour over my email.
And again, I did not say you violated the act. What I'm talking about is when people start responding back and everyone's sitting at their computer and now we have a discussion. No, I don't disagree. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe it's a good idea. I don't know how we how we explain to a judge that we're not deliberating towards any decision. We're just, talking sports. I don't know. It's very, now you and I as attorneys we can slice and dice that, but it's very difficult to distinguish the two. So I don't think you and I are really that far in disagreement as to what we're saying.
But
And hopefully I've expressed it well, but I'd welcome any questions
I
if you
wasn't
have it.
saying that I thought anybody broke any rules either. My response was is that if the mayor would have responded, and then potentially some of us may have responded also, and it may have gotten into that. At the first email going out is not the problem. The problem is, and the question that you brought up, is the mayor not responding. If he would have responded to all, then it would have opened up for maybe I wanted to respond or Tina wanted to respond, and then that's when you get into the gray area.
Okay, Bob, I know my time's up, okay, but one question. Mr. Mayor and the city council, if you turned around and contacted every city council and Mr. Attorney, and the mayor contacted every single person up there and informed them there was going to be a redo the meeting that you missed on the Tuesday, and you say reply all, is that considered open meetings at that time?
That's not a question.
No, that is a question. That is a statement. And I understand my time's up. I want to thank you very much, okay? But that's all, it's just a...
Did you reset the clock, Bob? Thanks. Walt Jordanic, Bel Air Avenue. Has there been a decision made on Mr. DiGiulio?
Yes,
And that decision would be?
there was a resolution by the council at, I don't know what meeting it is now, but it's been 3 or 4 meetings. Council issued a resolution of censure, yes, it's in the public record.
Okay. Do we have any numbers from last year's street fair, if the city made any money?
We do, and the city didn't make any money. The street fair commission made the money. And
Okay.
they have a right to make disbursements subject to holding a certain amount of money in reserve for the next year with the approval of the council.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned a $1,000 gift. Are you turning that back over to the city?
Not to me. Norfolk and Southern said that they have a grant policy and they'd like to make a gift to the city.
Okay, good. The Southfield lease property, I understand through Mrs. Folks that it's been sold. That deal went through, and that was for $12 million. Does the city receive that money, or does part of it go to the DDA?
Well, none of it would go to the DDA.
Okay, I thought that was part of the DDA district.
There's a down payment and there are expenses that we'll have to pay. We've got a broker that's going to get 6% of the selling price.
Right.
That's going to come out of the down payment. And there probably are going to be some restrictions when we see the new bonds that the state is issuing for us, because they're redoing our whole bond proposal, which the mayor and council have been told should relieve us of a 2.6 million annual cost and move it down to about 1.2 million.
Should, right?
Till you see it.
Right. Thank you.
Well, the DDA should be eligible for part of the TIF capture once the property is back on their tax. It's on the tax rolls now. But if they remediate the property and put up new buildings and all that, then if that's the question you're asking, it is in the DDA zone, and it is part of the TIF capture.
That was the question I was asking.
But that's not part of the sale price.
Okay, fine. Again, I've been jonesing for a city council meeting. I was disappointed it was canceled due to a power outage. Again, I don't see an emergency manager. Is she still here?
with the council's indulgence, I'd like to answer. She has not said this, but I know she's down with her family, and I think she's stayed over. But I think there's some illness there of one of her parents.
Okay, that's an answer. I would like to, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, I think the good way is commend two of the Allen Park Fire Rescue members. Don't know their names. I called 911 to come to my house so my brother-in-law wouldn't have a heart attack on my pool deck. And they responded, and they were nothing but business. I would like to commend those two fire workers, firemen, paramedics, whatever they are, for a job well done. How's the community center going? Okay, my time's up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Simmons, and I live on Keppen in Allen Park. I always find it humorous that things that are crying out to be on the printed agenda remain invisible so that there can be no citizens' comments before the meeting. Then during the final comments, we get up and express our concern, anger, confusion on the invisible issues, even ask questions that go unanswered. Finally, those of you sitting up here use your final comments to give the inadequate answers with no opportunity for us to respond. Therefore, these invisible issues we have shown to be important to us are once again ignored, and you all justify your behavior that should have been a job well done as just being good enough. I am here not only representing myself, but also my friends of Allen Park, some of whom I've never met, who do not have the time to come down here and sit through various votes on solicitation permits and the reading of new ordinance, etc., to finally be heard at the end of a council meeting that does not bother to put on their agenda the catastrophic event of August 11th and 12th. Like me, my Allen Park friends do not have the time because they are up to their necks in clearing out and cleaning up all of the toxic muck from a massive city flood. I may only represent 2 people or 1,000 people, but they are all your people and my Allen Park friends. Being the minority percentage does not matter when you may have lost everything, and we do not deserve being ignored. I cannot and I will not blame you for the actual flooding. It would be ludicrous for me to blame anyone for a natural disaster. But I will hold you responsible for your lack of visible action and involvement over the past 2 weeks when your citizens needed you. No helpful avenues were used to give out information such as the city website, cable stations, direction through city offices, and or town hall meetings. During the past 2 weeks, city leadership should have been providing resources through these avenues instead of forcing us to waste our precious time making phone call after phone call, trying to find out what to do, and then to be told, call so-and-so and see what they say, or be met with a please leave a message recording from the unavailable person with whom we need to speak, and no one calls us back. We could use help with the many forms to be filled out and questions we have on what to expect from the city trash pickup, insurance companies, FEMA, hazardous waste, scrappers and pickers. Maybe get help from the Red Cross with temporary emergency shelters if needed. It would be helpful to know what forms need to be filled out by the homeowner if Allen Park licensed people to pick up metal during the week, added trash pickups during the week. If there are what are the rules for the pickups, like what we can and cannot put out. Maybe you personally were affected by the flood. I don't know, But what I do know is you signed up for this job for the office you hold, and a couple of you are paid well for those positions. So you should have done your job, and you should be doing it. This hiding behind closed doors, no communication, silence, making excuses, making unrelated excuses because you choose to only hear what you want to hear must stop. The mayor, emergency manager, and city administrator should have been actively involved and visible in the lives of the Allen Park citizens during these past 2 weeks. I heard that the emergency manager and city administrator was on vacation. I was on vacation when the flood occurred. I ended my vacation and I came home because my house flooded. The emergency manager and administrator should have ended their vacations and come home because the city they run flooded. Thank you.
My name is Robert Turner, North End. Our basement is flooded 4 times. I shouldn't call it flooding. I should call it sewer backup. Now, I understand we've had 4 major rains. My basement is surge backup. So what I'm looking for in the future, what can I do as a homeowner to avoid this happening again? Mr. Mayor, I spoke to you last Wednesday about the town hall meeting they had in Southgate. Mr. Wilson, he did his job perfect. Like Nancy is saying, I'm not sure about the governing body. I was at the Southgate thing, and the mayor, he's up there with the phone, he's talking to the people. He had compassion for the people. For the last 2 weeks, that's all I've done. Worked in a basement, cleaning out sewage back up. And I expect somebody to say, I'm sorry, Bob. I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry, Nancy. I'm sorry it happened. But I know you got that compassion, but tell the people who had compassion. Okay, enough on that. I know we're talking about moving City Hall. There's a couple of choices, I understand. AT&T building a new City Hall. I'm not sure how much the citizens know what's going on. I know a little bit. And understand we need a new City Hall. But I'm supposed to sharing jail service with another community. And I don't think that's out of question doing that. That would save money to build a new City Hall. Also, we're selling the property next door. That money, that down payment, is being used towards City Hall. You're shaking your head, Bob. You must know something I don't know.
I will never support that.
Okay, good. Okay, that's
I don't know about everybody else, but
I don't support it either. I think the $3 million should be to use to pay the bond out, and not to build a new City Hall. That's my impression. That's all. Thank you.
I want to make sure I don't knock things over. Good evening, Al Wajinski, Vine Avenue. Okay, on a good note, I'm going to start this off on a good note, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the DPS workers, and I want to thank the Republic workers. They busted their butts. I mean, these guys were, saw one guy working, sat down behind the wheel, and 2 minutes, he was, fell asleep for about 10 minutes. And then he went back, and it was like he was there all day. I want to thank the city workers and Republic. They did their job. Okay, now, on a better note, is there any information on the Hill? Have we reached an agreement on what we're going to get paid yearly for police and fire protection, or is that still in Ms. Parker's ballpark?
That was one of the items I spoke of early, and that is that there is an amendment to the agreement that's going to address that. I'm not sure all signatures are on it, so before I steal anybody's thunder, I'm going to allow Joyce Parker to speak on the details of that amendment.
Okay, thank you. And to the chair. Mr. Mayor, I understand there is a standing offer for the City Hall and Police Department property. Is that true, sir?
We signed a letter of intent, I believe. Mayor and
Why
council-
didn't this go out on the website or any information we had to find out through going to the gas station next door?
Well, I do think it was as part of our minutes at one of the meetings, was it not?
It was a public meeting.
It was a public meeting. So,
Mr. Turner was here.
No, this was, well, this would be 4 weeks ago, yeah, that I heard about this property being sold. When do we have to vacate City Hall and the Police Department?
Through the chair, I think, again, you have to remember, they control no sale or purchase. They only go off what their information is, so I don't, like, they technically, legally, I don't think that means much when they make those agreements, Mr. Wisdom.
Okay, so in other words, we have to wait for the powers that be to tell us that there is an official offer. Thank you, Mike. Okay, and to the mayor, Mrs. Folks, are you going to have a city hall meeting, a public meeting here or at the high school about giving us assistance and how to fill out the forms and anything? Are you going to do anything about that, or do we have to go to Southgate or Dearborn?
well, I'm sure we are going to do something, but we have to have some information. The information that I got sent by an email from FEMA says, I'd like you to read this act that tells us how we do things. It's 112 pages, but it doesn't include our regulations and processes or forms. So I'm happy, I will not print 112 pages for anybody, but if you want an email and like the 112 pages and start down there, I welcome you to have at it. But so we're waiting. We've got another meeting scheduled with Homeland Security and FEMA, and we hope we will get more direction. Councilman Dingell's office is trying to help all the communities there. And
So will we have a town hall meeting or anything like that then?
well, I think when we know what we can put out to the people, we'll probably try and do that at one,
Okay. Also, through the Freedom of Information Act, I found out what the lawsuit cost the city of Allen Park, the one that was filed by Mr. DiGiulio. It cost the city of Allen Park between $22,000 and $23,000. Has he been ordered to pay that back to the city? I want this on record, so to speak.
he's not ordered.
He's not required.
He's not required by law, no.
Okay, so in other words, he can just, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. And for that money, we could have hired a police officer. And everybody have yourself a good night. The attendance here is late because the south side of Allen Park has no power. That's why.
And yes, and we put a CERT team out there to control the traffic on Southfield and
Yeah, DTE has no estimate. Thank you and have a good night.
Hi there, Brian Debo of Allen Park. I'd like to address the Executive Order 37, the Fund Balance Reserve Policy. As I stated earlier, the general fund balance, per the Executive Order 36, showed that we had revenue of $20 million for the general fund and expenses of $17 million, a difference of $3 million. Now, we have this fund balance reserve policy, which changed the rules of the millage rollover. Now, if we take a look at what was written for the millage rollover, rollback, it was 10% of expenses, which at the end of this fiscal year, $17 million, that would be $1.7 million. and we had a surplus of $3 million. So we, per the criteria for the fund balance, we met it for the rollback. We met the criteria for the rollback. What was promised to us at the millage, which was a big thing, was that 10% of expenses will roll back anything in addition to that that we have in surplus. Well, this new executive order changes the rules. Now it's 10 to 15%, and it's 1 to 2 times the debt service ratio. Wow. Now, I challenge any of you to put in dollar amount for this coming fiscal year, what is the general fund debt service responsibility? Put it in dollars, put it in dollars. List the debts that we have, list the principal and interest that we have, and put it in dollars so we understand it completely before you change the rules again. Now, I'm not arguing here about how much reserve we should have. That's not my point. My point is, you did it again to us, you said to us for the millage, and it was people on the council here at town hall meetings repeated over and over again about this rollback. 10% of expenses, we're going to roll back your taxes. It was a big selling feature. Less than a year for a 10-year millage, you changed the rules. How are the people supposed to believe what you say? You're going to come back to us some point in time for another millage, and people are going to sit back and go, what? What aren't you telling us? What aren't you going to change in the future? Now, I know that the excuse is going to be, well, the EM sets the rules. Granted, you people were elected to defend us, to represent us. And once again, you took the state side, and you're not saying a word about it. You people should be outraged. You should be outraged that this $400 settlement was put on our tax rolls, that we didn't pay by check when we clearly had the money. We clearly had the money and decided, nah, just put it on the tax rolls. You should have been screaming about that. Yes, the EM has the authority to do that. You should have been supporting us. Just like when the 75% of the people voted not to borrow any money, here we are, 3.1% surplus, $2.6 million for cash flow at the end of June, and we're going to borrow $3.3 million. Wow, isn't that terrific? Way to represent us. We told you not to borrow any money, and you took the state side. And once again, you're taking the state side because you're not objecting to what they're doing to us. Please, represent us, don't represent the state. Thank you.
Russell Pillar, Arlington Avenue in Allen Park. One of the things I'd like to respond to is Mayor Pro Tem Keenan's, or it came up during the conversations earlier. If you move from here to another facility for a police department and city hall, and you're going to contract out housing prisoners, as a former police officer in this city, during the course of the 29 years that I was here, we did the same thing. We had a contract at that time with Trenton. You don't have the manpower now to transport prisoners, especially on Monday or Tuesday when it's court day. When I worked here, there were 11 personnel on a shift on the road at one time, and it took 3 and 4 and 5 people just to transport the people back and forth from Trenton back to here. Then if they were confined again, you had to take them back. So on day shift, that's all we were, as a taxi cab running back and forth to a contract jail facility. So that's not going to work with the personnel that you have today. You're going to have to house them here.
I don't remember ever seeing that, Mr. Pillar.
Well, it's come up during the course of the rumor going about the city right now, too, is, like the mayor said, there's been a letter of intent signed for the sale of the present city hall. And I've been told from employees within the city that the appraised value at one time was brought up at a former council meeting, that the value of this property was $2 million. The rumor now going about is the property has been sold for $900,000, and that the Holiday Inn is going to be raising this facility, and the Holiday Inn is going to build on this site. Another thing I'd like to question, on July 22nd, you passed a resolution in regards to Councilman DiGiulio with certain conditions and restrictions that he was supposed to comply with or was asked to comply with. I'm not aware if he's complied to anything. So if he doesn't or chooses not to, the condition or the resolution was that he was going to be censured. How long does he have to make up his mind whether he's going to do anything and you're going to censure him? He's still participating here, as I can see from sitting in the audience, voting and has a say as to what's going on. If he is going to be censured, how long do I have to wait, or the citizens have to wait for that censure to take place?
I was just talking to the city attorney as to whether he wanted to handle it or they address it. The council censured Councilman DiGiulio.
Yes.
A resolution passed of censure.
Yes.
That was the censure. That is the action that the council elected to take because of behavior that was complained about by two citizens. And so that's complete. There's no anticipation that the council would take any different action than what they did at that time.
What is your definition then of censure?
A censure is a statement that we deeply deplored the conduct that and actions of this council person.
Okay, that's not the way the dictionary indicates what censorship is, but thank you.
Charles Levin Champagne. Had to type this out. Okay. Is our city charter have any power when we are under a state power? Because since the emergency finance manager, is the state charter or the city charter just like doesn't comply? I don't know if how to explain this, but in section 5.8, it says that you're supposed to have 2 meetings each month. I come here to get information. It's not that hard to put it on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or the next Tuesday. It's if it's like scheduling a problem. Personally, what I would suggest is at this meeting, the comments, the before and now, should have had double to like 10 minutes, 6 minutes, so that everyone can get as much information out as they can when they're up here. If they can't have 2 meetings, just double the time. At the next administrative report, can we have, or when Joyce Parker comes back, talk about the plan with the city hall, what building's supposed to go at, or same with the police department, just trying to get more information on that. Next time, can we have the AC on? I feel so sorry for you guys waving papers. Is there a sidewalk program where people can spend money in front of the house so that with the blocks of the sidewalks where they can improve it? Because when I go for my walks, I see there are some cracks in some sidewalks area. Same with the roots of the trees going underneath and making it rise and stuff. Just wondering if there's a program for that. And then some positive things. Street fair in the kids zone was wonderful. I love that it's every year. It hasn't stopped for 30 plus years. That many cities don't get that privilege to have a street fair downtown of their city. Great turnout with the election that we had. Even if it's just one person, it's still a great turnout that every vote did count and we got the information like quick. And I'm glad that that I've seen over the years that, especially the past 4 years, that empty buildings have been filled with businesses that it's like there's some that I still see like it's an outdoor that it doesn't have a for sale sign, but I'm glad to see that buildings are being filled with restaurants and different businesses. and I'm really glad that the next door did get sold, because I'm just tired of hearing the when is it getting sold and all that stuff. I'm just glad there's positive things happening in the city. Thank you.
Can you smile when I come up, because it'll make me happy? Hi, my name is Marcy DiGiulio Galka. I want to address what Mr. Russell Pillar said, being that he is a retired police officer. I am going to say this, I hope, for the last time. Angelo DiGiulio offered $1,000 to every school, including Inner City Baptist, Cabrini, any of the schools. If Mr. Russell Pillar and his wife and Officer Wayne Albright would take a lie detector test, stating that what they said was true. Now, these are two of these people, Russell Pillar and Wayne Albright, are either former police officers or police officers, and that is how they determine if someone is guilty or not. What you don't want to talk about is Angelo took a lie detector test, not one, but two, and passed it, that he was telling the truth. If he's telling the truth, they have to be lying. Bottom line is, this is over. You need to get on with the business of the city. I know that the Pillars want blood. It's not going to happen. The citizens of Allen Park elected Angelo DiGiulio to this council. They elected each and every one of you to this council. And if they want to, they will remove them. And all I'm saying is, I am really getting tired of hearing it. I'm getting tired of Al Wojcinski walking up here. I'm getting tired of the whole thing attacking my family. It's not right. Okay, Mayor? This boils down to, you should have stopped Wojcinski and
No.
what?
He has said nothing, and we're not going back, and you're not going to personally go after the man. We're not going to go back and try and figure out what he said at another meeting or whatever.
Okay, we don't, all right, okay.
You know, you
All right,
had your piece.
I would like, okay.
I let you go about the two people.
Who came up?
No.
Oh.
About the two people who were involved.
All right.
In the matter with your father. So, you know.
All right.
You keep saying, let's be done with it, but you don't ever get done with it.
I'll be done with it if they get done with it. I'm done, okay? I'm done.
Somebody always has to be the first one done.
We need to move on with the business of the city. And we've got problems here. We've got a lot of problems with this flooding, and we have tons and tons of people that need help. And I would like to see some committees or something started to try and help some of these people. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Pat Turner, Morris Avenue, Allen Park. I'm wondering, is there any kind of a program put together where this, you know, like we had the flooding. Okay, my husband and I are two seniors. For physical reasons, we cannot be going up and down the stairs. We had a foot of water, so like everything had to be taken outside. Is there any program put in place when a catastrophe like this happens that a senior can call and get help right at the beginning, not wait for a week or two? Is there anything put in place like that?
There is the 211 number, I think, that.
But we just got it, and it's a week or two late. You know, we don't want to have this smell, and we had murky water. We don't want that in our house sitting there for a week. I mean, is there anything else we can do? My husband got in the car, went out and got some help, which thankfully they were great. But this can't happen every time. You have to help the seniors. You are a senior. We have gone through our whole life. We have supported the council, the city, whatever. And now we need the help. We can't do this. So is that your answer? We called 211?
There's no program standing in the city to move to these kind of catastrophic events. You know, I'm sorry, you know, we're trying to put something together with the help, but the issue is, you know, how much money is going to be needed for the help, and the city's resources have not provided for that type of event.
Thank you for your time.
My name is Karen Piontek, Melbourne, between Moore and Malon. And I did have sewer water, Mr. Wilson. I went into my basement in this rain event at about 7 o'clock, and the smell drove me down there. There was sewer water. There is rainwater. I have called the city numerous times about the lake that forms on my street. This is a picture on August 18th of more rain that came down in about a minute, I would say, or two, of my street. And I've called the Department of Public Service many times. They've come out and have given me every single excuse about this. Why doesn't this street drain? There are 2 drains in almost 2/10 of a mile on our street. Me, 3 of my neighbors keep the drain clean. They are not plugged. They're not plugged tonight. Yet this forms, and I have the pictures to prove it, and I'm up here to stress upon this council that, like everyone else here, we need help. I need this addressed. I am fearful that if this keeps happening, I'm going to be, and my 2 or 3 of my neighbors, it isn't my whole neighborhood. And I looked at the map, Mr. Wilson, that was a wonderful presentation. But I think that because it has not hit our city like it has other cities so gravely, that we're not hearing enough from the city council to the governor or to the powers that be. This is a chronic problem, and it hasn't been addressed. I've lived in this house since 1980, and I'm fearful that if this continues, I won't have a house, that the basement walls will cave in. When I go in my basement, the floor seems to be separating from the walls. And I'm tired. You can tell. I didn't prepare a written statement because you can see the way I'm presenting here how this has gotten to all of us. We can't do this anymore. The city has to have some kind of avenue for help and ask for help and be more vocal. In the public, I see other mayors on the radio, on TV, but I've not seen anyone from Allen Park, and this has been a chronic problem in the city for years, and my street can prove it. My street has become the catch basin. That's how I feel. And by the way, we did lose a vehicle on Outer Drive outside of Baker College trying to help another citizen.
Are there any other citizens that want to come forward at this time? I see none. We will come to the council for their comments. And this evening, we will start with Councilman Cisco.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I don't really have too much to say. I think it's all been said here at the podium. So I've lived here since 1951, and there's been a flooding problem since 1951. I know that's not any consolation for anybody that gets flooded, but Allen Park was built on a swamp, I believe. So we have some natural problems that exist in some of the neighborhoods that throughout the history of Allen Park that maybe some people aren't aware of. Doesn't take away from the degree of severity of what's happened to people's houses and what continues to happen. You know, the easy answer for me to tell everybody is it's going to take money to fix these things, because they can't get fixed by themselves without money. And I don't know where the comprehensive plan is to do that, because as you've seen Mr. Wilson's PowerPoint presentation, is that drains have been built, and it's cost us literally hundreds of millions of dollars to have these things done, and we still flood. Still. So I do feel bad for everybody that's flooded. I had neighbors that flooded. I did not flood. So it was kind of like Mr. Wilson pointed out, in the neighborhoods you could see where people had water, some didn't. And I made it a point of driving up and down all the streets of Allen Park since the flood to view what people have put out for trash, because then you can begin to see all the problems that are in the neighborhoods, where people putting out carpeting, putting out furniture that never was put out before, you know, and you see it, and there's a lot of it. And I don't know if the 700 number, the 721 number that we were given is in totality how many houses actually were affected that people actually didn't call. So I would suggest that everybody call. And here's the other part about calling and leaving a voicemail or not getting an answer back. You know, you've got a handful of people maybe answering calls. You know, we're actually kind of not set up for that kind of an emergency. So imagine 100 people calling at the same time. Who gets through? So there are inherent problems in how our city operates and has been operating, because we are a small city. We're a small government. We don't have big city type programs because they cost money. So I think we need to look at all that. And I think this flood was an eye opener, and I don't think it's going to stop. I think we're going to have other, I think it's going to keep happening. Maybe not next year or the year after, but it's going to happen again. And I think this is an eye opener for all of us, that we need to have a better response. So I hope everybody has a good Labor Day weekend, and hope everybody can get their houses taken care of and their neighborhoods taken care of. Thank you.
Councilman Templin.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a lot to say either about it. Nothing was planned for my comments tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Wilson for your presentation. It was very enlightening, something that we haven't heard from in a long time, and to understand the problems that we have. I am sorry for everybody that flooded. It's just, I don't know what the answer is. I hate to say, we just have to look at it again, and we have to figure out what it is. I do know it's a lot less than it was 14 years ago, the flooding. So we have done some things. Obviously, we haven't done enough. But it's not just Allen Park. It's tied up to the whole Wayne County system, the United States system. It's just the whole infrastructure is falling apart. And till we can get our heads wrapped around it and figure out everything that needs to be done, it's just going to be what it is. I'd like to thank everybody for their comments tonight, and have a good night.
Councilman DiGiulio.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Wilson for his presentation, and don't forget you can call that 211 number, and hopefully you'll get some satisfaction. If you don't, come in and see the mayor. He should hopefully be able to help you too. We act like it's really a big day in Allen Park when we sell that property for $12 million. We're going to pay over $600,000. We're getting about $3 million down. We're paying over $600,000 in real estate commissions plus any other fees that come along. Now we have a group that wants to buy the front 4 acres of this property right here that we're sitting in. They want the 303-foot frontage on Southfield Road and whatever it goes back to make the 4 acres. They want to buy it for $900,000. They want to build a restaurant and a big hotel. So what I'm wondering is, why are we getting involved in a deal like that with him, and we're going to pay him to build a new city hall at the back of the property? He wants $5,400,000 to do that. When he builds this restaurant and he builds this hotel, he's bringing in all kinds of brick, mortar, shingles, bathroom fixtures, kitchen fixtures. He's bringing all these things into the city for his own building. Why doesn't he bring the extra and build us the city hall? Why don't we trade him what we don't need of the property from City Hall? Just give him the property and let him build us a new city hall. It looks to me like we're trying to bargain with somebody that's already set his sights on what we're going to pay. Only 2 of us on council here attended the Justice Center in Inkster, the mayor and I, and they took an old building and renovated it into a new building, and they did it for, I asked Mr. Baji, it was $150 a square foot. Correct, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, now, when he gives us an estimate for the property here to build us a new city hall at the back of the property, he wants $198 a square foot. That sounds a lot better than $200 a square foot. And he's going to start with a brand new building. You're not going to, we're not going to. So what I'm saying is we need to get back there and bargain with Mr. Baji and find out exactly what we can get. I mean, he's bringing everything in here. He could build our building first and then build his restaurant and his hotel at the front of the property. While he's bringing stuff, bring another dozen bricks there, sir, and build us a city hall. Don't take $5 million out of our pocket to do it. Well, thanks you for coming out tonight. It's a miserable night again. Good night and thanks.
Councilman Gavarrecki.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, beginning of August, we had the Downriver Senior Olympics, so I want to congratulate all our seniors that participated in those, as well as the street fair that went on. Thank you to the committee and all that came out to support that. Later in the month, last week, we had a CERT fundraiser, and I want to thank everyone that came out to support us. It was a very successful fundraiser, and for the Knights of Columbus and their talent and donation that they donated that evening for us. Basement flooding. I've only lived here since 1991. That's my 4th flood. This year wasn't as drastic. I've taken precautions. Please do whatever you need to do. Call the city. Let them report it. My whole block was not all full of dots there. So all my residents that were out there saying their basement's flooded from wall to wall, please call so that we can report it and at least log it. And maybe we can find the reason why our block seems to flood a lot. I think I have the other catch basin. Our street, when I got home from our meeting that night, the water had gone up to our fence. So it had receded halfway down the driveway. Our street tends to flood a lot. When it rained again a week later, that little downpour, the street flooded again. So my neighbors aren't helping the situation by not calling because we can't report it and it doesn't look like an issue that Mr. Wilson can identify as being an issue. So please call and do that. I want to thank every single city employee for everything that they've done during these 2 weeks. Not only did we have the flood, but we had a lot of down wires and houses burning and trees down and everything last week Tuesday as well. So thank you all for everything you've done. And Mr. Wilson, thank you for the presentation tonight, and your staff has done an excellent job. I'd be willing to help take information, sit down, set up an hour over at Community Center, try to help people fill out forms. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm willing to help them any way they can. I don't have much time, but I'll be glad to help. It's after the fact, but I'd be glad to come and try to help you get something out of the basement, cleaned or something, but you know, please, I'll be willing. I've been through it. It's hard, it's sad, and you never get what you had to toss out back. So with that, good night and thank you.
Councilman Hayes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a very down kind of evening, so I'd like to turn the page a little bit and try to discuss something. Hopefully it'll be a little more informative and maybe educational. 150 years ago, 1864, several thousand Navajo Indians were rounded up by Kit Carson and the Army and marched over to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, and held in captivity for 4 years in a virtual dirt prison camp without walls or food or anything, and many died. 88 years later, some of the descendants of these Navajo Indians joined the United States Army as code talkers, and they developed a code that was never broken by the Japanese. Some say, but for these Navajo-speaking individuals, we might have not won that war. And on August 14th, I was at a celebration in Window Rock, Arizona, and I met several of the code talkers. President Reagan made August 14th Navajo Code Talker Recognition Day in 1982, and later President Clinton awarded these code talkers with the 29 original with gold medals, and the several hundred others who were later to come that weren't the originals with silver medals. And at the event on August 14th, while you were suffering through the travails of the rainstorm and the flooding, I was in a sunny spot shaking hands with some of our notorious veterans in this country who are fiercely patriotic. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was kind of an interesting bit of history. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Keenan?
I'm going to try to be quick here. I actually have a lot of things I want to say tonight. I want to say, first of all, that though my basement has never flooded, this is the first flood that I have not been in somebody else's basement helping them. I had several folks text me and ask me questions, and I said, you know, what can I do to help? And everybody said, we're good. So, you know, I feel your pain. I really do. I mean, like I said, I can't say that I've had my basement flood. I have not. But every time other than this one that we've had a flood, I've been down in somebody else's basement pumping sewage out or helping to clean up down there, and I'm not afraid to do it again. So, you know, don't hesitate to call if I'm available. You know, there's a couple of us up here that do have full-time jobs, so it's a little bit more difficult for us than others. But we'll do what we can. Tina said it. I'll say it again. But I want you to know I am sympathetic, and I am sorry, Bob, to all of you. I'm sorry that you've had to go through that. I really am. Boy, just several things that were said tonight. I want to finish on another good note. Just want to commend the CERT team. Again, tonight as we walked in, I mentioned earlier as the mayor was out that we were out of power here and we lost the light here at Southfield and Pinecrest, and they're out there. I don't know if they're still out there if we got power back, but they were out there tonight. And that makes at least 8 events that they've been on since their inception, which has been relatively short. I don't know the exact date, but it's relatively short. And they have been out 8 different times that they've been called into service for the community. So I think we need to recognize them. They are a group of people that are out there. it was brought up again tonight, and I'm not gonna get into all the details, but I'm gonna tell you again. Resident after resident came up to that microphone and asked, if the Southfield lease properties are sold, will the money that's used as the down payment be used to pay down the bonds? And we said, yes, 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 every time somebody came up to that microphone. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I can only speak for myself. I don't care if the emergency manager got some legal opinion that we can use that money to build a new city hall or not. I will never stand up here and vote to do that. We need a new city hall. And we have vacant buildings around here, and we have other options other than paying $5 million or whatever the total price was to do that. The only avenue that we can have to be able to be in a situation where we can build a new city hall is to use that money. And we said we were not going to do that. And most of us up here ran on integrity to try to bring some integrity back to the previous council. Now, people can laugh out there and what have you, and I'll get to Mr. Diebold's comments here in a minute. But I will not, and I can only stand up here and tell you that I will not vote for that, using that money. The $2 million supposedly fund balance that we have for this year, or whatever the number was, doesn't take into consideration the $2 million fund deficit we had the prior year that still has to be paid. And this has been discussed over and over. This is not a new thing that we discussed here tonight. So if we have a fund balance this year, it has to be used to pay back the previous debt. And that's what we've talked about and talked about and talked about. I'm not going to sit here and split hairs over numbers or what have you, but you know, you guys can sit out there and smirk and laugh and do whatever what you want. But I'm going to tell you, everybody up here is a citizen of this city. Every one of us has the same impact on the decisions that are made for this city that you folks do. So to sit out there and laugh and act like we don't have any integrity here or anything, it's a shame that any of us has to go through that. The jail sharing, never ever did that ever come out of my mouth. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to say that the police chief and the police officers have said over and over again that they are more than willing to stay in that jail right now, even if we evacuate all of City Hall, where the building is crumbling and the ceiling's literally falling in, on a temporary basis, as long as they know that something is going to happen in the near future with another building. And I've never talked about sharing the jail. Now we find out in the last meeting, because as is said here, that we don't have a lot of information, that Ms. Parker's already made a decision that we have to move into the Southfield lease properties for a year as part of the agreement. So I don't know what's going to happen, but let me tell you right now, that was never anything that I ever agreed to or said anything about sharing in a jail or anything like that. The whole idea was just to move everything all at one time right into a new facility. And I've been a big proponent of the Allen Road facility, the AT&T building, because it's the cheapest idea that we have.
Clerk Mizzy.
I'm going to be a little long-winded here. First of all, I'd like to recognize everybody who fled. It is not fun. However, I'd also like to recognize the people that got hit by the storm a few days later. I know it was just sporadic parts of Allen Park, but when you went to the Old Goddard area where my parents are and where I grew up, it literally looked like one of those pictures from Hurricane Katrina. There were roofs with shingles ripped off their house. Half the trees behind my parents' house were laying in their front yard. And all this within the same week as flooded basements. In the year 2000, we used to have over 200 city employees, police, fire, and that was just full-time workers. Today, I know we're not even at 100. So I know a lot of people get frustrated thinking, why doesn't the city do this? Why doesn't the city do that? There's actually people here that think we're too heavy right now still, that we could shed some more weight. But you just seen the exact result of what happens when you could barely function on a day-to-day, and then you have a disaster. To be quite honest, I was here for the 2000 flood, where we had about 200 employees. I think we handled this one better. We didn't have the communication out there a lot because some of it, to be quite honest, we have to look at because it doesn't work, okay? We got the forms online, we took calls in every office, we did our best. I could tell you right now, almost everyone who was answering phones was called every name in the book. And you know what? Everyone took it because a lot of those people that were taking the beating were the same people whose basements flooded that work here. I know it's frustrating. It's probably the worst thing to watch the same, what do they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, getting the same, and it is. We have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this sewer system, and to even know it still floods this big is very frustrating. It really is. I mean, from the city standpoint, you can look at bills going, I just looked through minutes in the 60s, and they were working on storm sewer relief then. And here we are, and it's not fun, but the lady brought up, is there someone to help us? And then after you got done, you looked disgruntled and disgusted, and I don't blame you. But put yourself again in their shoes where they can't tell you any answer. That's the same when people come up and ask them any question under the sun. 2.5 years ago, Carl Johnson said, you do not want an emergency manager in Allen Park because they're not held accountable to anyone other than the governor. Well, that's what we're seeing here. I'm not blaming Ms. Parker, but the mayor could try to call every department head and say, I want all of you here front and center right now. Well, let us check with Ms. Parker first. That's literally what my and their answers would have to be because we're under state control. Now, I know a lot of people get frustrated, but jumping back to that lady, I would love to volunteer more, but I have 2 kids at home. My parents, the night of that storm, had to go to a hotel. I couldn't help my own parents. I would love if there was someone to call to say, hey, look, can you go check on my parents? That is something that's not just a city. That is something we have to work on, this whole community. Because that's what I worry about, is not being able to get to my parents at the southern, they're in Allen Park, thank God. But there was almost a point you couldn't get there right after that storm. So I just want to say you have a valid point, and I'm glad you did bring that up. My street floods too. And I know I sound like I'm repeating, but I sit here every meeting after every meeting, and I bite my tongue a lot. But again, we share the same frustrations as almost every one of you. Her basement, that's how she ran for council. I remember her coming to a council meeting with her husband and just being so upset in the hall. And the best thing to come out of that is she ran for council and she won, and she's been able to make small differences. So when people come up here and start blaming the mayor, the council, you people, you don't care, that's just not true. It hurts me because I do care. Everyone who comes up here, I think, oh gosh, what if that was me? And unfortunately for some of them, that was some of them. So I just want to know that we're not against each other. We're all on the same team. So with that being said, I've talked too much. Thank you all for coming out. God bless you and good night.
City Administrator, folks.
Thank you, Mayor. I kind of want to echo a couple of things that I just heard from Clerk Mizzy. But first and foremost, this was a catastrophic event. You're never prepared adequately for a catastrophic event. While my basement didn't flood this go around, it has flooded before. Not only is it not fun, it is gut-wrenching to lose personal items, those albums, those pictures, those keepsakes. I feel for you. We all have compassion for every one of you that were touched by it directly or indirectly. Many of us sitting up here found ourselves in the midst of it that Monday night after a special meeting. And you know better than I do, even though I was out there for a couple of hours, every single direction you turned was impassable. And at every given moment you thought, oh my gosh, I hope my car doesn't stop running. and you would go through the foot, the 18 inches of water, only to reach a deeper place where emergency vehicles turned you around. It was time to go a different direction. So we all do have compassion for what you've gone through and what most of you are still going through, because there is a residual impact, and we recognize that. A residual impact when you have water in your basement. It doesn't just affect you at that moment where you're trying to figure out, how do you bail out? Number two, it's, I don't want to lose these keepsakes. And then it's further on down the line when you recognize that there was no turning back. You lost a part of who you are and your former life. So we do have compassion for you. The one thing that I do want to say is that even in catastrophic conditions, adversity has a flip side. Every single department was called into service to become recipients of the calls, funnel them to the appropriate person over in DPW. We heard the stories, we commiserated, we were all in it together, and we still are. And if you need help filling out forms, by all means, get in touch with me. We can help you do that. We want to make sure that all of the information that is out there that is yet to be recovered gets to FEMA. It does help. The other thing that I want to say is there are so many people that were called into service, but front and center was an absolutely outstanding DPW team. And if tonight's presentation that was so excellent in sharing information and educating all of us is any example, you know that they are under terrific leadership. Those people are extremely dedicated, and we thank them dearly for their service and the service over and above the usual hours that they work. Second of all, you had police and fire that were called into service. My goodness, all of you have heard the story about the 60 students stranded at Baker. And it was our fire department, but also with the help of, thank you very much, the Allen Park school system that provided buses. This was a golden moment, a glimpse into what community is really all about. You had organizations and entities that came together in a partnership to make rescues. Those students weren't the only folks that were rescued. You've heard the other stories. So we are very grateful to everyone that stepped up, not just did their job, they went over and above, and they still are. And so we thank them for that. The only other thing that I wish to say is 211, make a mental note, whether it's this time or another time or a different circumstance. 211 is through the United Way. They will get you in touch with food pantries, clothing places. They will also provide underprivileged families and seniors with hands-on help to muck out your basement. So 211 is something you want to put right by your phone so that you don't forget, should there ever be not just another circumstance like we have experienced over the last 2 weeks, but it could be some other circumstance that maybe is just private to your family. 211. Have a very good evening. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We had another storm here. We've gotten a lot of rain this season, as we know, more than we wanted. It is a terrible thing to have all the damage that the homeowners have suffered. I wish I could say that in these kind of cataclysmic weather events that it won't happen again. I think the way that we've designed our neighborhoods and everything, we designed them to a standard that we had in 1920. And you heard Mr. Wilson say tonight, 55% of the acreage of this city is hard surfaced. So they're like massive water collectors, and it dumps it immediately into our drainage systems. For those of us who grew up here when the roads weren't paved, there were maybe 1,100 homes, not 11,000 like we have now. The water had lots of places to go rather than our basements. And throughout this country, we're finding that the area that has water, because the people that don't have water have their own problems, that's an issue. The design standard through the 70s for stormwater sewers was to accept 2 inches of water over a 24-hour period. So you know when you get 4 inches or 6 inches, pick a number that we saw up there and got it in 2 hours, that our system is going to be overwhelmed. And the county in 2003 changed the rules for all commercial and industrial facilities that they have to be able to keep on their property 5 inches of water for 24 hours to try and stop, I mean, we need hard surfaces, we need our businesses and that, but that's a place where at least we can try and stop this water going immediately into the system, which can't handle it all at one time. It's going to be a problem. I think we've got to look to make certain that all our weeping tiles are cleaned. We will get a better picture when Mr. Wilson has completed his maps and with FEMA and see if we've got problems that need work by the city or it's going to be on a house-by-house basis. But that's a problem. I heard one of our councilmen say tonight, if your land doesn't slope away from your house, you're collecting more moisture than you'll want to be collecting. These are things that we've just got to watch and we've got to be eternally vigilant about. And I don't know that it's going to solve all the problems, but certainly it will help us. So I think what comes out of this, we may learn something. We may be able to set up some kind of a central system that goes into action when we have some sort of cataclysmic event. We have some things that are set up when they occur, a railroad problem, or if you remember years ago when we had that terrible airplane crash at the airport. And those type of things, we have trained our communities to react and help those people who are suffering. But in this area, it's been an area that I don't think that we adequately address, or if we can even adequately address. I think that's the first question, is can we address it, and if so, then how are we going to do it? So I hope everyone has a good Labor Day weekend. I hope the weather's good. We don't see any rain, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilman Hayes, supported by Councilman DeGiulio. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.